Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of what Naruto was in Rising of the Shield Hero. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Naruto and everyone eventually found Philo since Naruto could detect her presence. Naruto was relieved that Philo wasn't hurt. Behind Naruto, Raftalia, Yoruichi, and Roxanne were two of Rifana's maids. Naruto wondered, "What were you doing up here, Philo?" Philo looked at Naruto and said, "Mel-chan wanted to play hide and seek. She said I should hide somewhere I wouldn't be found and not come out no matter what." Philo looked down dejected, "But she never came for me in the end." Philo looked up at Naruto, "Where is Mel-chan?" Naruto sighed as he shook his head. "A man named Idol, whatever his name is, came in. He arrested Van Ryknot's mansion looking for us. We're gonna go get Melty back. Let's move. We're gonna keep our promise to someone who put their faith in me." Philo, Raftalia, Yoruichi, and Roxanne all stood next to one another with smirks on their faces. "Those who get in the Shield Hero's way." Yoruichi's nails elongated. "We'll make them pay," Roxanne added as she placed her hand on her sword. Raftalia nodded her head in agreement, "Whether it's in goods or pay." Philo cheered out, jumping up and down, "They'll learn to never mess with us in any other way." Naruto closed his eyes listening to their statements as he opened his eyes sharply and looked out the window, "Because it's our Nindo way." Backquote. 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 Asterisk Rabier territory. Everyone arrived at a cliff that overlooked Idol's territory. Naruto knelt as he overlooked the land. Naruto looked up to Raftalia to see her worked up. "Was this Idol guy your previous owner?" Raftalia's eyes widened as she looked at Naruto. Everyone else was rather shocked at the possible suggestion. Raftalia's eyes then softened and then narrowed, looking down the town. "Yes, he was. How did you know?" Naruto shook his head. "When it comes to the people you care about the most, being able to recognize their reaction and remember the past you told them is crucial. I was able to put that together. Don't worry, I'll make him suffer for what he's done." Raftalia nodded her head. She looked over to Naruto with a serious look on her face. "I want to confront my past." Naruto stood up and then walked over to Raftalia. "Raftalia, I got your back. We all do, and I love you very, very much." Naruto wrapped his arms around Raftalia to comfort her. Raftalia accepted the comforting hug. Before everyone knew it, they were all in one giant group hug, helping Raftalia feel comfort. Just then they heard shouting and Naruto saw a group of demi-humans with pitchforks and other weapons. They were shouting that they wanted their lord back. Naruto simply said, "Anger for one person for revenge clouds their judgment. However, when you anger a mob of people comes together to fight for a cause, they're a force to be reckoned with." Raftalia smiled at this. "It's great to see that they love Van Sama so much." Raftalia was glad the people were fighting to get their lord back. Naruto nodded his head. "For now, let's take this as a way to sneak in. We'll attack directly at the heart of this so-called master, and show him what true punishment is." Backquote. 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 Idol's room. Idol looked at Melty with a crazed look on his face. "I love that valiant look in your eyes." Melty looked at Idol with her eyes wide, worried for her safety. Melty was ready to cast a spell at Idol if he tried anything. "I want to see it become despair and your face warp in agony. Let me have a good look at you." Melty's eyes shut with worry and tears began to well up inside. Just then there was an explosion. "Tch. What the?" Then a knight opened the door quickly. "Idol-sama. The demon of the shield has infiltrated the mansion. TSSSHHHHHMMM." The door was broken open with Philo butting her head through. The knight went flying along with the debris. Philo saw Melty. "Mel-chan. Philo-chan." Melty looked onward in shock. Just then from the dust, Raftalia appeared. "Raftalia-san." Melty saw the others come running past her. "Yoruichi-san. Roxanne-san." Melty went running up to them, but Idol grabbed her by one of her ponytails. Idol held up a saber to Melty's throat. "Don't move. Tail one step forward, and the princess's head will fly. You think we'll just let you do as you please?" The dust that covered the entrance dispersed as Naruto walked through it. Naruto scowled at the man. Naruto fished a tri-pronged kunai out from his pocket and held it in the air. Just then Naruto sent some chakra to the kunai and dropped it before everyone knew it. The tri-pronged kunai switched places with Melty, who was now safely at Naruto's side. Melty's eyes widened as she looked up to find Naruto right next to her, and he didn't even move. Idol looked at Naruto in shock, and just then Yoruichi and Roxanne lunged forward. Yoruichi kicked Idol in the stomach, and Roxanne kicked him in the family jewels, sending him flying into the wall. Idol hit up against the wall and slowly slid down as he held his crotch in pain. Naruto looked down at the man, seeing the pitiful look on his face. The man had saliva dripping out the side of his mouth as he tried to collect himself. It seems Roxanne might have crushed a testicle by accident. Then again, does anyone really care? Though the idea of it being an accident immediately left his mind. It was on purpose. Nice one, Roxanne. Melty was glad and smiled at everyone else who came to save her. When her eyes landed on Naruto, she blushed, and very much like a tsundere said, "Naruto, why did you come for me?" "Because I've never heard of a hero who abandons a comrade who was kidnapped to run away." Naruto turned his head to her and gave her a light smile. Melty blushed harder as she turned her head the other way. All my efforts were wasted. Naruto was going to sigh, but he saw the relief look on her face. "But, thanks." Idol slowly stood up as he growled at Naruto, "You dare make a mockery of me? Torture isn't enough for the likes of you." Idol pulled out a whip. "You will pay with your lives." Everyone turned their heads to Raphtalia, whose front bangs covered her face. She walked up to Idol with a blank look on her face, showing a blank angry stare at him. She had the strength, the power, and all the grievances needed to end this worthless sack of shit's life to an end. Though one thing was for certain, everyone saw Raphtalia's tail standing on its end. Naruto watched as Idol pulled his whip back and whipped it at Raphtalia. Naruto narrowed his eyes and Philo shouted, "Oni-chan." Philo was worried since the whip hit Raphtalia. Naruto stuck his hand out. "Wait." Philo looked at Naruto shocked. Idol growled out, "Lowly demi." Idol whipped at Raphtalia, which hit her shirt, tearing a part of it. Then her thigh. A whip slashed across her cheek. He went to whip her again, but Raphtalia quickly swung her sword, knocking the whip out of Idol's hand. He fell back onto his attack and backed up. Wait. Idol held his hand up and screamed out, "Wait." Raphtalia extended her hand out, pointing the blade of her sword at his neck. Idol screamed out, "Spare me." Raphtalia grew angry as the sword shook as she held it to his throat. So many demi-humans begged for their lives just like that. "But you." Naruto watched as tears ran down Raphtalia's cheek. Idol once again begged, "Spare my life." Raphtalia pushed it closer to his throat. "After you killed so many demi-humans in your underground chamber, you think you can beg for your life?" Idol looked at Raphtalia a bit closer as he said, "You can't be one of those villagers I kept enslaved underground." Idol was shocked beyond compare. Wait. You lot would have died like dogs in the wild if I hadn't taken you in back then." Naruto glared his eyes again. "He's going to rot in a cell forever. I'll make sure he's made a prime example of those who decide to torture the innocent. I'll make sure he's a public display for everyone." He even tried to prey on Melty, filthy monster. I'm sure Queen Morelia and even King Dumbass would love to hear his old war pal was thinking of raping his youngest daughter. Raphtalia pressed the tip to the man's throat, drawing blood. "Shut your mouth. You think I'd forgive the atrocities you committed? I haven't." Raphtalia raised her sword. "I haven't. I could never forget." Idol quickly backed up and went onto his hands and knees. "I'm sorry. I'll apologize." Raphtalia raised her sword. "This scumbag. He took Rifana-chan." Idol pushed his head to the ground. "No. Please don't." Raphtalia's eyes showed anger and hatred appearing on her face. Naruto walked forward as he asked, "Raphtalia, killing him will not bring you closure. Instead, I have a better place for this piece of trash." Naruto walked forward as his eyes flashed to the Rinnegan, and Raphtalia looked at Naruto. Stuck his hand out as the King of Hell appeared forth, which Naruto allowed everyone in his party to see. This is the King of Hell who deems those who have done unjust things in life. He judges based on their sins and atrocities in the world. I will make sure he is personally arrested and he'll be forced to live in the same conditions as you guys did as slaves. Once he dies, I'll come for his soul, I'll reap him myself, and personally see to it, he is escorted to the deepest depths of hell. Because no amount of repenting. Raphtalia added in, will change the horrible person he is, the one who put so many demi-humans through hell, then killed them. Raftalia tightened her fist. I will never forgive you, but knowing you'll be locked up and rotting away the rest of your life until you die of age. Makes happier knowing no one will ever suffer what I and those other demi-humans had to do. Raftalia looked down on him even more so. If I were to kill you now by my blade, I'd be no different than you, and I'm better than you. So, I won't take your life. But now for the rest of whatever pathetic excuse of a life you'll have. Know that it was saved here by me, your once slave who was a demi-human. Just then Idol stood up and grabbed his sword, but Naruto appeared and stopped it. Naruto was using a single finger which shocked everyone. Naruto narrowed his eyes at him. Don't forget these eyes, for when you see them again, will be your last day here in this world. Naruto shifted his eyes to the M's and placed him into a Tsukuyomi. Idol went limp, and Naruto teleported him to where Morelia was. One of Naruto's tri-pronged kunai appeared in Idol's stead. Naruto smiled as turned to Raftalia. I'm proud of you, Raftalia, for being better than I am. I love you. Raftalia smiled back with a blush of her own. I love you too, Naruto-sama. Raftalia reached up and claimed his lips, causing Melty to blush at the scene. Just then Van entered the room. Excuse me, Shield Hero-sama. Naruto looked up to see Van holding his left arm. Thank you. You saved me. Melty ran up to Van. Van, are you hurt? She held her hand up and said, First Aqua heal. A green wave of magic began to help heal Van's boy. Van looked to Naruto and said, Sir Shield Hero-sama, we should escape right now. Naruto shook his head. No, there is something else we need to do. Backquote. 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 Outside of Idol's mansion, underground slave prisons. Raftalia stood at the entrance of the open doors. Idol imprisoned his demi-human slaves underground and tortured them. Van looked at Raftalia and asked, How do you know this? Raftalia frowned as she said, I was one of them. This causes his eyes to widen along with Melty and Philo. Roxana, Yoruichi, and Naruto were still rather angry but already deduced that Raftalia was his slave. Naruto spoke up and said, Raftalia, we'll do this together. Naruto extended his hand out to grab hers. Raftalia accepted it as she said, Let's go. The group went further into the basement where Raftalia stopped by a cell. Naruto watched quietly as Raftalia stared at it, and slowly knelt. Naruto knelt next to her until a voice that belonged to Van called out, There's a survivor. Yoruichi helped the demi-humans sit up as Van healed them. Everyone ran towards Van and Naruto walked up to the lock and simply broke the door off its hinges. Just then Naruto heard Melty's voice call out, Naruto. Over here. Naruto got the door open and Melty began to heal the little girl. Just then Roxanne shouted, Naruto-sama. Philo and I found someone else. Naruto and Raftalia ran over next to Roxanne and Philo, who found a boy in the cell. He seemed to be a boy around the age of 10 with dog-like features. Raftalia's eyes were wide. Keel-kun. When Raftalia said that, Naruto raised an eyebrow. He could feel it, sense it. This Keel boy was a girl. Raftalia ran to him. Once Naruto got the door open, Raftalia ran to him and knelt in front of him. Keel-kun. Why are you here? The demi-human known as Keel looked up as he said, Who are you? Naruto looked at the two interact and saw a relieved look on Raftalia's face. Raftalia said, You were brought here too. I'm so glad you're alive. Raftalia stood up as she took her sword out and swung at the chain holding Keel's arm up. Keel looked at Raftalia confused. Who are you, Oni-chan? Did you forget? It's me, Raftalia. Raftalia smiled as she looked at Keel. Keel replied, Raftalia-chan. No way. Keel began to shake his head. No, you can't be her. Raftalia knelt back down to his height, and Keel backed up and shook his head. Stay away. Raftalia smiled as a cloud of smoke covered her. Naruto watched as Raftalia took the appearance of her younger self. Raftalia then said, Don't you remember the time you went swimming and nearly drowned? Then Sadina Oni-chan had to save you. You ate a poisonous mushroom and ended up with an upset stomach another time. Naruto turned to his left and saw Melty come walking in. Raftalia continued, You were in pain and begged me not to tell anyone. And when I said we should rebuild the village after the wave, you were the first one to agree. Raftalia placed her right hand up to her chest. That made me so happy. Raftalia then poofed back to normal, looking like her older self. Keel's eyes began to water as he looked at Raftalia. Raftalia-chan, it's you. Raftalia lunged forward and pulled Keel into a hug. I'm so grateful that you're still alive. Melty wiped a tear as Keel looked at Raftalia's party. Yoruichi and Roxanne all came walking into the cell with Van not far behind, guiding other demi-humans out. Keel asked, who are they? Raftalia released her hug so she could look Keel in the eyes. I'm with the shield hero now. Keel looked at Raftalia in shock. What? The shield hero? Raftalia nodded her head. Yes. The shield hero is here to save you. Along with everyone else here too. Naruto walked forward. Let me see your arm. Naruto stepped forward and Keel gave Naruto his arm. Naruto began channeling the mystic palm jutsu to heal him, as well as adding in the shield's medical skills. Keel smiled as he saw the glow and shield. You are the shield hero. Keel then began to cough as Naruto sensed something more within him. Since it was Raftalia's friend, he didn't mind whatsoever. Raftalia looked at Keel worriedly. Keel-kun, are you okay? Keel was able to stop as he turned to Naruto. I see, Rifana-chan would have been so happy to see him. Naruto looked at him as his eyes narrowed. Naruto looked to Raftalia to see her face frozen. Keel-kun, where is Rifana-chan? Is she also? Keel simply looked to the wall next to his cell. Before Naruto knew it, Raftalia ran out of the cell as she heard the whispers of her friend. Hey Raftalia-chan. Do you think the shield hero will come to save us? Raftalia ran down the hall as she remembered answering Rifana. I know he will. I hope so too, Rifana answered Raftalia. Rifana continued, I wanna see him soon. See him and. Raftalia continued and said, and. Rifana said, have him make me his wife. Raftalia continued to run down the hall until she found Rifana's cell. The cell that kept her until her last moment, and Naruto was already hightailing it behind her. Though not fast enough to be within her peripheral view, Raftalia found herself staring at Rifana's skeleton. Naruto arrived just a little after Raftalia as he walked up next to her. Naruto saw tears beginning to roll down Raftalia's eyes. Raftalia turned to Naruto as she began to cry in his chest and she shook her head left and right. The others quickly caught up as Philo slowly walked up next to Naruto. She was by his left leg. Naruto-sama. Melty looked at the scene and simply said, I can't believe such monstrous deeds were being done in Melromark. Van shook his head. Melty-sama, as much as I hate to say it, similar things happen all across this country. Indeed, Yoruichi added as Roxanne nodded her head. I was kidnapped from my village after Melromark Knights raided her village. Roxanne looked down with sadness in her eyes. I fled my homeland after my parents here told me to run. I did so, and I was eventually picked up as a slave. Yoruichi looked at Melty. I was forced to flee from my home as well, as our village was pillaged by Melromark soldiers. Melty was deeply hurt and saddened. I can't believe it. Van only shook his head. That's why we needed Sayat. But now. Melty remembered back what her mother asked of her. Melty, I need you to do something for me. Return to the capital and admonish the king for his unjust treatment. Ordinarily, I would go myself, but. Raftalia soon stopped as she walked into the cell and knelt in front of Rifana. Raftalia held a prayer kneel. I'm sorry I took so long. Raftalia then opened her eyes. This was Rifana-chan. She was gentler and more graceful than me, and she'd always say she wanted to meet you, meet the shield hero. Naruto walked forward and placed a hand on Raftalia's shoulder. Raftalia, let's get everyone gathered up. So we can give everyone a proper send-off. I won't let them rest in a place like this. That way they can rest peace in a place where they'll be loved. I will seal their remains into scrolls. We'll bury them back in your village, Lorolona. Raftalia then said, I hate myself, I couldn't protect anyone. Raftalia pulled her hands to her chest. Before meeting you, I was powerless. I couldn't do anything. If only I was stronger, I couldn't keep everyone safe. Raftalia hunched forward and shook. They could have. Heel, who was helped over by Van, said, but you did protect us. If you hadn't come to help, I probably would have died here. Heel grew weak and almost fell until Roxanne caught him. Heel continued, and the only reason everyone hung in there without losing hope was your smile. We decided to keep smiling, no matter how bad things got. Sorry, Raftalia stated, which made Keel freeze up. I'm sorry, Keel-kun. I can't. Enough. Naruto stated, you're wrong about all this, Raftalia. Raftalia shouted, you're right. I don't have the right to walk beside you. Naruto grabbed her shoulders and turned her towards him. Shut up. You do. You deserve to stay by my side. Raftalia, you and everyone else have kept me going. If you weren't there, I don't know what I'd do. You changed me to be the better person I am today. Naruto pressed his forehead to Raftalia's. I love you, I need you in my life, Raftalia. It's because of you that I decided to begin trusting this world again. You believed in me back then that I'm here right now. I got to meet Philo, Yoruichi, Roxanne, and even Melty. Heel added in, yeah, it can't have been a mistake. I mean, you were so tiny, and now you've met the shield hero. Not only that, you're his girlfriend. You've become such a cool lady and come back to save us. Naruto turned his head to the left. Look. 2 kids were standing next to Van, Yoruichi, and Roxanne. You were the one who kept those kids alive. Raftalia looked to Naruto. Naruto-sama, I. Naruto smiled, reached his hand up and wiped a tear from Raftalia's cheek. Naruto smiled at her. The others will rest in their home of Lorolona. Besides, for Rifana, I think you came just in time when I'm around. Naruto turned his head towards Rifana's skeleton. Raftalia, gather up her remains, we'll clothe her. Then I'll make sure you keep your promise to her, that she will meet the shield hero. Naruto stood up and turned and began to walk out. I will only allow those who I love cry tears of joy and sing out happiness from their mouths. For those who wish to make it not so, I will rain down vengeance, justice, hell, and my fury upon my enemies. I shall show everyone who the Prince of Uzushiogakure, reincarnation of Ashura, next sage of 6 paths, Kyuubi Sukunabaikona no Kami, the shield hero. Naruto turned towards Raftalia with a smile on his face. Who is Naruto Uzumaki is? Naruto began to walk as Raftalia gathered the remains of her departed friend. The group ascended from the ground prison of a hell hole. Naruto and everyone still heard the rioting demi-humans. The demi-humans have gathered to get you back. You're gonna want to go tell them that you're safe and to go home. Just then the ground shook as Philo called out, Naruto-sama. Look. Everyone looked over to see a knight kneeling at a monument. He held up what seemed like a rosary. The knight held up the necklace. Oh, God grant me the power to rend the devil asunder. Van looked in shock. No, don't tell me. The heroes of the past built that stone monument to seal a monster away. That knight is trying to release that seal. I wonder if Idol gave one of his knights the incantation to dismantle it. The knight finished as the ground began to crack and separate, which had a purple glow coming from the ground. The knight smiled evilly as he said, go on and destroy everything. You are free from your confines now, beast. The stone monument broke apart as a giant beat took its place. The beat roared out as the knight said, for Idol-sama, devil of the shield. You can't stop me now. If I can kill the devil of the shield now, maybe God will bless me. Just then there was a large earth spear that shot up from the ground. The giant beast was impaled by it and hoisted up into the air. The knight turned around to find the beast he summoned impaled and up almost 300 feet into the air. Naruto stuck his finger out as little chakra arms spun a mini-tailed beast Rasenshuriken along with a truth-seeking orb in the middle. Pest, disappear. Naruto's fingers chucked it as the attack flew towards the beast. The attack then slammed into the beast as a large dome blew up around it, disintegrating it to nothing. Naruto growled out, I don't have time for your childish games. Naruto extended his hand out as a bone appeared from the palm of his hand. All-killing ash bone, Naruto mumbled. The bone rocketed towards the man impaling him. He quickly began to crumble up. He then fell over dead. Everyone looked at Naruto. This was a brand new technique that Naruto didn't use yet. Naruto looked at them and replied, what? It wasn't gonna let this beat ruin the moment. Just then a person appeared in front of Naruto and his group. Naruto looked at her curiously. She had silver hair with thin streaks of light blue, cut in a short bob with 3 tufts of hair standing up vertically from the crown of her head, like cowlicks. Her eyes are red, and her face is small and well composed. She's dressed in a red and white gothic Lolita-style dress and white sock-like silk boots. She's about the same height as Philo. The person said, for introductions, I am Fitoria. I am the queen of all Philolials all over the world. Melty looked on in shock as she moved forward a bit. Fitoria. You're her. I heard centuries ago, a hero of the time is said to have raised a Philolial. Her name is legendary. Naruto raised an eyebrow, and Fitoria said, please follow me to my forest where you may rest. And as well collect yourselves from your recent experience. Naruto had no qualms, so he turned to Van, take Keel, the kids, and your people back home, we'll accompany Fitoria. Van nodded his head and left listening to Naruto. Backquote. 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 Asterisk Fitoria's forest. Everyone soon arrived and Fitoria waited for them to ask questions. Philo asked, so, can you turn into a Philolial then? Philo did so by transforming into her big size. Fitoria nodded her head, yes, I can, but I'll show you another time. Thought it will take dozen times longer than a normal Philolial's lifespan, so don't worry yourself over it. So, now it's your turn to introduce yourselves, Shield Heroes Party. She must be really old then if that's what she's telling us. Naruto sighed, deciding that introductions were in order. Naruto went ahead and introduced himself. I am Uzumaki Naruto, Shield Hero. As well as a former shinobi of the Leaf. Raftalia introduced herself next. My name is Raftalia. Nice to meet you. I am Roxanne Yeager, but I am actually from Naruto-sama's world. I was Kasumi Uzumaki until I passed and was reincarnated here. Roxanne gave a curtsy. Yoruichi pointed to herself with a confident smile. I'm Yoruichi Nightwalker. A pleasure to meet, Cha. My name is Philo. Likewise. Fitoria then looked over to Melty and met eyes with her. Though a pout face appeared on Philo's. Fitoria asked, we've met before, haven't we? Thank you for your help that time. Melty was excited to see Fitoria. No problem. I'm Melty Melromark. It's a pleasure to meet you again. Melty gave a polite bow to Fitoria. Fitoria nodded her head, then it will be Mel-tan. Mel-tan. Melty looked up at Fitoria with a confused look on her face. Naruto crossed his arms and curiously asked, you've met before, huh? Melty turned to Naruto and nodded her head, yes. I ran into her on the way back to the capital after a diplomatic visit. Naruto deadpanned, so, you getting distracted by a bunch of Philolials is common for you. Naruto shook his head, just like every other fairy tale princess. Melty simply pouted at Naruto for the comment. Fitoria then spoke up and said, you dispatched that monster quite easily, very impressive. All creatures would have a very hard time beating that thing. Yet you took it down like it was nothing. Naruto didn't want to boast or say too much. Yes, it was easy due to it having no reasoning within it. So, a surprise attack and powerful technique to destroy it was the best solution. As well as causing the fewest casualties. So, what is it that you need? Fitoria kept a blank look on her face, and she said, it's a long story, and there is a far better place than here to chat. Fitoria gestured to her right as the other Philolials moved to reveal two carriages. Fitoria looked at Naruto and also said, I sense an impressively strong aura from your shield. You went from the cursed powers to the blessed powers quickly. Everyone soon got into the carriages and was enveloped in a golden light. Before they knew it, everyone was in what seemed like ruins. Raftalia stepped out first. Whoa, it's like Naruto-sama's ability to teleport. Melty looked at her surroundings in shock. Did we travel instantly? The history here, it's impressive. Yoruichi added. What a dump. Philo finished. Wop. Ow. Meanie. Philo shouted out after Roxana slapped her upside the head. Philo, don't call other places dumps when you don't even know what it is. Roxanne scolded her like a mother. Fitoria spoke up and said, I hear it's considered the remains of civilization the original heroes defended. Naruto looked at her and said, you're unsure, aren't you? Fitoria nodded her head. Insightful you are. This place existed before I was born. For what it's worth, I'm watching over it. Melty had to know, is this place a Philolial sanctuary? Yes, I'm not supposed to bring humans here. Melty simply looked to her surroundings again and smiled. Wow. Naruto liked it. I see, so I can do it here then. I hope this works. Bro and everyone looked at Philo as she held her stomach. She was hungry. Fitoria then said, I think you all should get some rest. Raphtalia simply placed a hand on top of Philo's head. Naruto nodded his head. We can, but there is something I'd like to do first. Naruto turned to Raphtalia. Raphtalia, take our Rifana's bones. Roxanne, fetch me Raphtalia's old clothes. Raphtalia looked surprised. You kept those? Naruto turned to her and chuckled. Yeah, they were still in good condition. Besides, I think it would fit Rifana than those dirty old rags anyways. Raphtalia did as Naruto said and brought out Rifana and laid her bones on the ground. All 218 bones of Rifana's bones laid out on the ground. In the correct order how bones should be orientated in the body. Most demi-humans have the same number as humans or more depending on their demi-human subspecies. Humans have varying from 206 to 213. Raphtalia's old clothing was laid on top of Rifana's bones. Naruto walked up to Rifana's bones. Raphtalia, I do this for you, for the person I love and care for. I shall not let this world take any more from you, especially not your friends. Naruto was soon enveloped in a golden chakra glow. Naruto's body was coated in yellow chakra, a sort of circular design is featured prominently over his stomach. The whisker-like markings on his face become thicker to resemble the trigram. 6 Magatama markings are present on or around his collar. Various other dark designs appear along his body, sometimes densely enough to give the appearance that he's wearing a bodysuit beneath the yellow coat. A pattern consisting of a Rinnegan-like marking above 9 Magatamas also appears on his back. His eyes become yellow, and his skin does not glow along with the rest of his outfit when activated. As well as the 9 black truth-seeking orbs floating behind him. Along with the sun mark on his right hand which is also infused with the moon mark. The power he absorbed after he killed Sasuke. Naruto turned to Raphtalia. Raphtalia, so I can give Rifana her body, I need to know her appearance. Once I get that, I'll restore her body the way it used to be. This technique relies on imagination, and I need to know what she looks like. Naruto's eyes morphed to the Sharingan that put Raphtalia in a simple jutsu. She gave him the image of what Rifana looked like. Once Naruto released it he turned to Rifana's bones. He placed his right hand on Rifana. Naruto then said, creation of all thing jutsu. Then Naruto switched his Sharingan to the Mangekyo Sharingan and then the Rinnegan. Naruto lifted his hand from Rifana's body which was beginning to restore itself. It was the nervous system, and soon the circulatory system. Soon flesh, muscle, skin, and then organs. The brain and heart were the last organs that were yet to be made. Naruto quickly did the hand signs ram and then a snake. Naruto called out, Rinne Tensai no Jutsu. Geto art of Rinne rebirth. As usual, the King of Hell appeared before Naruto. Everyone was allowed to see the King of Hell. Naruto stuck his hand out as the King of Hell's tongue came out and was holding what was a green orb. Naruto took it and grabbed it and the King of Hell dispersed. Naruto looked down as he felt the technique he used to finalize the brain and the heart. Naruto then placed the soul into the body using his Rinnegan powers to attach the soul once again to the body. Naruto stood up and took a step back waiting for Rifana to wake. A few seconds passed as the girl began to twitch in movement. Naruto watched as Rifana's eyes fluttered open as she stared up at the starry night sky. She slowly sat up and looked around, and her eyes began to focus. Where am I? Rifana's head continued to look left and right. Raphtalia, watching all this held her breath with her hands up to her mouth. Raphtalia just watched as Naruto did the impossible, he rebreathed life into Rifana's remains. He created her a new body and then called out her soul, no way, Rifana-chan. Raphtalia took a step forward as Rifana stopped looking left and right looking at everyone. Rifana noticed Raphtalia as she came running at her. Raphtalia soon slid to her knees next to Rifana pulling her into a hug. Rifana. Rifana, I'm so glad you're back. Naruto looked onward, he believed that since it was her remains, he was able to give it back its flesh and blood, that her soul would recognize her body and allow her to inhabit it once more. Raphtalia slowly broke their hug with tears rolling down her eyes. Rifana looked curiously at Raphtalia as tears began to roll down her face. Rifana reached up and placed a hand on Raphtalia. Raphtalia, is that you? Yes, it is Rifana. It is me, it's Raphtalia. Raphtalia pulled her into a hug once again as she let out more tears of joy and happiness. Fitoria looked at Naruto in astonishment, his powers were godly. There were no other words to describe it, nothing more fitting than the title of God should be given. By no means should anyone have this ability to do what he just did. Then again, it was clear he did not use magic. Melty had tears running down her cheek, she was truly taken back by Naruto. He could be callous and cold to certain people, yet, his heart and mind were always in the right place, always looking out for his loved ones. He was willing to do anything to give them life once again. Melty and Philo hugged one another as they cried watching the beautiful scene. Yoruichi and Roxanne held back their tears as best they could. It was impressive what Naruto did, and their love for Naruto only continued to increase. His desire to do anything and everything even if it defied the laws of nature. To do what he felt and thought was right for the people he cares about. Even still, they found themselves weeping at a beautiful sight. Naruto's six-path sage mode soon dispersed as he fell to one knee. Everyone looked over to hear a thump as they saw Naruto flat on the ground. Raphtalia's eyes widened. Naruto-sama. Roxanne, Yoruichi, Philo, and even Melty shouted out with worry, Naruto-sama. The group ran over to Naruto with Raftalia getting there first. Raftalia rested Naruto's head on her lap as Naruto took a deep couple of breaths. He's never done the creation of all things jutsu and then the Rinne Tensei no Jutsu. Ghetto art of Rinne rebirth before it took its toll. Naruto had labored breathing as his face slowly sunk in along with his hair turning white, Naruto-sama. Raftalia looked at Naruto worriedly as Naruto lay in her arms seemingly in a weakened state. Naruto-sama. The girls all shouted including Melty, but Fitoria all in looked in worry for Naruto. However, once the symptom appeared, his face went from pale to back to its normal cream color. His skin rebounds back from being wrinkly. His hair color went from white back to his usual blonde. However, the tips of Naruto's hair had a tinge of red in them now. Soon Naruto slowly opened his eyes. What happened? Naruto saw Raftalia's worried expression on her face. The rest of the girls also had tears welling up at the side of their eyes. Why is everyone crying sad tears? Just then Naruto got it. Oh, I guess it makes sense, the same thing happened to me like Nagato. The only difference is I revived one person, then again I use. Tap. Naruto stopped as Raftalia gently tapped her hands on his cheek. Why you scared us. All half to death. Philo nodded her head agreeing, your hair turned white, and you became old. We thought you were going to die. Roxanne knelt beside Naruto's left side and she placed a hand over his heart. What type of jutsu what that? Yoruichi was on Naruto's right side kneeling next to him. Melty knew what it was. Did you use too much power or something? Chakra is what you called it. Did you grow? I know sometimes if someone uses too much magic power, they could die. Using up their life force. Fitoria added in, different abilities and powers that perform miracles and that go against nature. Often come at a terrible price, I can feel it, you've spent almost all your energy. Yet, none of your life force was lost. Impressive. Naruto nodded his head, I can't move my body, but my chakra is slowly replenishing itself. Naruto knew he used a bunch of Kurama's chakras, but it was also refilling quickly. Along with his reserves, just those jutsus took a huge toll on him, not only that but he isn't used to it either. Naruto slowly sat up as he took a few breaths in and out. Don't worry, my chakra is already nearly 1/4 of its way refilled. Growl Naruto looked down at his stomach as he felt a bit embarrassed. I guess I'm also quite hungry as well. Come let's us all eat. Just then everyone turned their head to see Rifana come walking up to Naruto. She looked at him curiously. Are you, the shield hero? Naruto turned to her and smiled. Yeah, I am. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm glad I was able to bring you back. Then I know it makes Keel and Raftalia very happy. Not only that, then you get a second chance at life. Rifana looked at Naruto with a small smile. I thank you, Shield Hero-sama, I'm honored to have been resurrected by you. So, thank you. Rifana felt her cheeks heat up. Naruto nodded his head at the head. Don't sweat it, I'd do anything for Raftalia. After all, she's one of the most important people in my life. Naruto chuckled a bit as he scratched his cheek. Rifana looked at Naruto as he scratched his cheek. Then back at Raftalia as she blushed as her tail wagged back and forth. Yoruichi and Roxanne also chuckled and smiled as well. Rifana's eyes widened. Wait. No way, Raftalia-chan. Are you dating the shield hero Sama? Raftalia quickly choked on her saliva at the sudden question. What? Well, yes. Raftalia's cheeks turned bright red as her tail began to wag quicker. Rifana pouted as she crossed her arms over her chest. No fair. I said I wanted to make the shield hero my husband. Naruto deadpanned. Sorry kid, but you're a little too young for my tastes. Especially the little princess over here. Hiroka-san wants me to marry her. What? Melty's eyes widened as she turned to Naruto as he blatantly stated as if it wasn't an issue. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Your mother never told you. What? Backquote. 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 One mental breakdown overload. Dinner later. Everyone began to eat the dinner that Naruto prepared game they'd killed, cut up, and he sealed away for later. Everyone helped pitch in as Yoruichi, Raftalia, Rifana, and Roxanne got herbs from the forest, Melty water, and Philo got rocks to help start up a fire pit. Naruto filleted the meat to prepare for supper. Thought before everyone knew it, they found a bunch of Philoleals staring at them. It's great, but I feel a bit guilty. Naruto looked at all the other Philoleals. Yeah, same here. It's weird. Roxanne chuckled nervously. I mean having them watch us eat. Yeah, Yoruichi said with a light smile while her cheek twitched. Philo turned to Fitoria. Isn't Naruto-sama's cooking great? Fitoria nodded her head. It is great. Melty looked at them and smiled. They're like sisters. Naruto chuckled and said, yeah, they do. They even eat in the same sloppy manner. Rifana looked up at Naruto and asked, Naruto-sama, do you think I could join you? Naruto looked at her and Raftalia wondered what Naruto would say. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. I don't mind, but it means you'll go through my rigorous training. I need to catch you up to speed with everyone else. Yeah, then I can grow, level up and become an adult. Then be your bride. Rifana cheered out happily, which Raftalia deadpanned at. Though, Raftalia was wondering just how many more people he was going to attract. Naruto looked at all the other Philoleals as he stood up. Alright, I'll make you all some too. Roxanne and Raftalia get me some bigger pots, Melty more water, Philo and Yoruichi get to hunting and find some more herbs. Backquote. 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 Several meals later. Naruto sighed as he dispersed his shadow clones after almost 20 pots of food were made for all the Philoleals. Everyone was asleep. Naruto saw his part along with Melty and Rifana all asleep in the hordes of Philoleals. Naruto turned his head as Fitoria walked up behind him. Shield Hero Sama, it's time for us to talk. The two began to walk down a path where Naruto was lower than Fitoria as she walked on a slightly higher path. Fitoria asked, do you have any idea what that monster was? Naruto shook his head. Not a single clue. Van told me that heroes from long ago sealed it away. They created a monument to keep it sealed away. I came to seek you out not because of the monster. Though I did hear about a new queen candidate has been discovered. Fitoria held her arms out to keep her balance on the ledge. If you're talking about Philo, I'm not going to let her go until she wants to leave. Naruto closed his eyes as he continued to walk with Fitoria. Naruto did have to ask, is it because of the shield that Philo grew up differently than the regular Philoleals would? Fitoria hopped over a crack in her path and stopped. She didn't turn to him as Fitoria continued, yes, indeed, because a hero is currently raising her. Fitoria turned to Naruto and asked, tell me, why was the seal removed? Backquote. 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 Deeper into the ruins. Naruto explained the story of the idle idiot along with how a certain part of the crown made it difficult for him. So, he quickly dispatched it even after it was released. Fitoria let a sigh out as the two walked by old stone pillars. I must say I'm appalled by all you cardinal heroes. Mainly for squabbling with the wave nearly here. Naruto didn't respond and the two continued to walk. I know the shield hero has always been scorned by human supremacist countries. As much as humans and demi-humans hate each other, it is unacceptable for heroes to be fighting. Naruto looked at her with an impassive look, even at the end of it all. It wasn't his fault, he was set up in the beginning, but he wasn't going to work with them. They aren't needed, he's the only real weapon that can fight anyone and anything. He isn't easily beaten and so far there has been nothing that can. You clearly know just how powerful I am, I've never once gone full power on anyone. If I did. Fitoria cut him off. You would surely kill them. Yes, I can see that much, shield hero. Fitoria kept walking ahead and Naruto followed suit. Fitoria knelt and sat down on a ledge of an old ruined house. Fitoria picked up a rock and placed it on top of another. Fitoria asked, "Don't you cardinal heroes know about the hourglass? The dragon hourglass?" "Yes, of course we do," Naruto said as he sat down next to her. Naruto then added, "I know they're around the world, I simply send shadow clones to beat them. It isn't that hard." Fitoria looked at Naruto and nodded her head. Makes sense why there haven't been any casualties in other countries with waves. Even will the king of Melromark summon you all in Melromark? Originally each cardinal hero is meant to be summoned to one country each and help them fight the waves. The queen informed me of that, that's why I help by sending clones discreetly. They use my 6 paths sage mode to keep themselves disguised. Naruto finished as Fitoria nodded her head. I go where I am asked. But the other 3 aren't taking part in any other battles. I seriously don't care about humans all that much. Fitoria placed another rock on top of the previous one. I fight because the hero who raised me asked me to. I remember going to help and seeing one of your clones fighting. Naruto looked at her curiously. Let me guess, since a hero asked you to. A hero raised you. Fitoria nodded her head once again. Correct, I was, and my job is to protect the world. But I can't protect it all by myself. I need the heroes. Naruto shook his head. Those other heroes you call them, are off in their little fantasy world. Naruto said sternly, you think they could hold up to a candle to my strength? I don't usually boast, but even using 0.05% of my strength against them wouldn't even be a match against them. It is a slaughter. For now, I can handle them on my own. However, Fitoria placed another rock upon the other and it collapsed. I won't be able to save a thing on my own, I am only one being. Lucky for you I and multiple each, me having about 10% of my total power. They can last for hours on end, so I wouldn't worry so much. Naruto smiled as he looked up at the moon. Nothing can be me unless there is another Otsutsuki in this world too. Fitoria looked at Naruto confused, but the words he says have merit. Naruto is a powerful individual. It was clear to her already that Naruto far surpasses her power. Heroes are supposed to work together. That is an absolute necessity to protect the world. Naruto shook his head. No way. The entire country, mainly the king and first princess, and those guys want me gone. Hell, dead I bet even. Besides, I'm more than enough for the waves, and even you. Don't doubt that I can do this with just me and my party. They're all going to continue to receive the same training as I went through. I wouldn't be surprised if they're already more powerful than the other cardinal heroes. I know what's happened, and I get the gist of it. Even then heroes shouldn't fight amongst themselves. Fitoria repeated once again. Naruto shook his head. It's the fact I won't ever work with them again. I don't need them to protect this world. All they care about is being a hero, acting like a hero, getting bitches to bow at their feet, or thinking it's some damn video, whatever they call it. Besides, they may be heroes, but what they are certainly don't define what a hero is. Naruto took a moment to pause as he narrowed his eyes as he stared at the moon. A hero is a person of distinguished courage or ability, admired for his or her brave deeds and noble qualities. Those other heroes, you call them, aren't heroes. Just selfish pricks wanting to fulfill their selfish desires. Even if I'm doing the same, at least I'm doing what's right as a hero to protect the innocent. Even if you can call me a hero, all I care about is seeing the people I love smile and giving them everything they deserve and more than. Nothing else matters to me more than having the people I care about the closest to me. Those who oppose will regret their entire existence. I can understand your reasoning, but even still it's unacceptable no matter how you look at it. Fitoria said once again, and Naruto understands what she is saying. Though it's annoying if they won't even cooperate with him. Naruto sighed and said, okay then, let's kill them, and we can summon new ones. I'm already here, and you know me dying isn't an option. Fitoria closed her eyes and then opened them. Naruto felt hostility from her. Is that so? I see then. A breeze began to blow, causing the trees to move and Fitoria's hair to flutter in the wind. It was all so long ago that my memory of it has faded. Fitoria stood up. But before I say anything, I must ask. Are you willing to work alongside the other heroes? Naruto thought about it for a moment as he closed his eyes. He took a few breaths and thought, if it came down to it, maybe, but after they grovel at my feet begging for forgiveness in their naivete. I know Itsuki and Ren might work with me, but not so much Motoyasu. Even still, it's a stretch. Fitoria stood up and turned to look back at Naruto. Alright then, I still remember the right thing to do. If the heroes continue to fight each other instead of the wave of catastrophe, then for the sake of the world, I will kill the 4 cardinal heroes. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he looked up at Fitoria. He could tell she was strong. She would trump the other 3 with ease and give his party a run for their money. However, when it came to Naruto versus Fitoria, she was no match for him. She is maybe on par with Shikaku, but even then, it's a stretch. I'm pretty sure that's a threat. Fitoria nodded her head, a promise. Naruto sighed as he stood up and closed his eyes. When he opened them, his eyes were blood red with a black slit for his pupil. Naruto said with a growl-like tone, if you're involving me and threatening me, you know it won't end well. I won't be stripped away from the ones I care about. I am, however, willing to try, but if they say no, it's no. But that means you kill them. You even try to make a move against me. It will be your last. For that, I promise you, isn't just a threat. It's a promise. Naruto along with everyone else was prepping for breakfast, gathering what they needed. Naruto thought back to what Fitoria told him the other day. While Yoruichi and Roxanne were cooking, Raftalia looked over to Naruto to see him in deep thought. Naruto-sama, is something wrong? Naruto looked at her as he closed his eyes and shook his head. No, everything is fine. Just deep in thought. Then again, she could be just lying. She knows she can't beat me in a one-on-one fight. Before Naruto knew it, everyone sat down at a table to eat. Naruto simply created the chairs and table out of his Mokuden. Raftalia smiled looking at the other Philoleals around them. They all seemed to have taken quite a liking to you. Melty nodded her head, smiling brightly. Yeah, right. Rifana and Philo were next to one another, munching away at some bread rolls. Just then Naruto looked over along with everyone else to see Fitoria standing next to Melty. Fitoria raised her arm up and stuck her hand out at Melty. Fitoria said liberation. Wind prison. Her hand began to glow with a light blue hue. Before everyone knew it, the table, food, and chairs went flying. Everyone stood up as they saw Fitoria trap Melty in what seemed like a wind prison. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Is she really attacking us now? She knows she can't beat me, so why? Melty, who was confused about what was going on, asked, what is going on? She stuck her hand out to touch the prison and then flinched in pain. She reeled, her finger back have been cut by the sharp wind blades. Rifana, who was shocked, stood behind Naruto, and Philo looked at Fitoria upset. What are you doing to Mel-chan? Fitoria didn't even turn her gaze away from Naruto and the others. Fitoria said, Mel-chan, I want you to be my hostage. Fitoria knew better than to turn her away from Naruto. Fitoria jumped back and stood on the ruins of an old building. Raftalia was ready to fight with her hand on her sword like Roxanne. Yoruichi had her hands up with electricity jumping between his fingers. Naruto looked at Fitoria unamused. Usually when taking someone hostage you don't ask to do so. You just do it. Besides that, what's the big deal? You going to kill me like you promised you would? Philo looked angrily along with Raftalia, Roxanne, and Yoruichi. No way. I won't let you hurt Naruto-sama. If you think you can even lay a hand on him, Yoruichi stated coldly as her eyes began to glow yellow with electricity coming off of her body. You'll have to get through. Raftalia glared at Fitoria as her eyes began to glow brown. Us. Roxanne drew her sword at the same time Raftalia did. Roxanne's eyes had a red glow. Fitoria ignored them and said, Shield hero, promise me. Promise you'll make up with the other heroes. Philo upset shouted out cutely, let Mel-chan out. Naruto walked up and asked, I'm not going to try if they don't. Besides, it wouldn't matter if they were even here. You and I both know I am more than capable of handling the waves with my party. Even still, I must ask you to. Fitoria retorted. She was not taking no for an answer. I know why you want us to work together, but those 4 don't understand a lick of real common sense. Naruto shook his head annoyed. None of them truly understand what a real hero is, none of them know what it is like to go to war. All they ever see is what they can get out of it, and their own personal gain. At least I helped when those who asked for it, and I take it way more seriously than those buffoons you call heroes. You know why? I made the promise to the hero who raised me. Because of that, the heroes must work together. It's the only way to save the world. Please, Fitoria had an almost pleading tone to her voice. Naruto shook his head. It's not happening, they don't even want to work with me. They only survived the last wave because I forced them to get out of my way. Naruto's eyes turned red with black slits. I am more than enough to protect this world. I did it once before, I can do it again. I have people here with me who believe in me and care about me. I'd trust them over any so-called heroes. Naruto took a step forward and closed his eyes. I'm sorry to word it to you like this, but just because he asked you to try to make all heroes work together. There are just some people who just don't work well with others. I have no issue working with people, but it's only the people I trust and want to work together. It's basically asking you to protect the entire world yourself. It's impossible. Fitoria's hair covered her face. In that case, new heroes must be summoned. To be able to do that, the current ones must be killed. Naruto shook his head as he readied himself as brought his shield up. Naruto's shield turned into the Blessed Series, which caught Fitoria off guard. Then, prepare yourself, because you made a mistake in making enemies with us. Fitoria closed her eyes and then opened them with a less hostile look on her face. In that case, Shield Hero, prove to me that you and your party can handle the waves alone. Naruto relaxed as he closed his eyes and let a sigh out. He rubbed the back of his head. Roxanne, Raftalia, Yoruichi, and Philo, show me what you have all learned. Naruto turned around and took a few paces back to stay out of their attacking distance. Naruto knows she doesn't need to test his power, she already knows he can beat her. Just then Fitoria said, Shield Hero, I know very well how powerful you are. In my current state and transformation, I know I am no match for you. Fitoria raised her hand up and then pointed it at Philo. I want a one-on-one with Philo. Philo looked at Fitoria with worry. Me. Fitoria nodded her head. Prove to me you're strong, and I'll release Meltan, and I won't kill the heroes for a while. Philo nodded her hands as she brought them up ready to fight. I think I understand what's going on, but if I win, Gushujin-sama won't be killed, and Mel-chan will be fed too, right? Melty looked upset not being able to do anything. All right, I'll fight in this form. Fitoria jumped down from her spot and stood across from Philo. You can fight me in human form too, Philo. Philo reached behind her and grabbed the gloves that Erhard gave her. All right, let's do it. Once down, Naruto and the others watched with Rifana standing next to Raftalia. Everyone was worried about how well Philo would perform. Naruto knew Philo could not beat Fitoria, but she could give Fitoria a run for her money. Fitoria placed a barrier around them to try to keep the damage to a minimum. Here I come. Philo leaned forward with her arms streamlined with her body. Come at me whenever you're ready, Fitoria said in a monotone voice. Philo then jumped and did a somersault in the air and stuck her foot out. Naruto and the others watched as Fitoria moved the side slightly to dodge her attack. Fitoria was surprised. Interesting, she moves faster than I thought. Not bad, but not fast enough. Fitoria grabbed Philo from her outfit and threw her up into the air. Philo, who spun in the air, righted herself up. She then sent chakra to her feet along with wind magic. This granted her a foothold in the air, and with both feet, she shot off from the foothold. Fitoria narrowed her eye. Impressive, I've never seen a technique like that before. Philo shot forward, but suddenly Fitoria disappeared from her field of vision, which made Philo stop in midair. Just then Philo sensed someone behind her as she turned around and stuck her hands up. Philo guarded against Fitoria's downward chop with her hand. Philo was sent careening into the ground, but she landed on her feet. Philo stuck her hands up into the air, which began to glow a deep green. As source of your powers, Philo orders you. Decipher the laws of nature and blow my target away with a vicious vacuum burst. Philo stuck her hands out and formed a few hand seals, wind style, Zevit tornado rampage. Philo had a large dark green tornado shot from her hands which began to spin and tear up the ground. Fitoria sensed something off about Philo's spell. Nullify the vacuum burst. Anti-Zweight tornado. Philo's tornado crashed into Fitoria's counterspell, but to Fitoria's shock once more. The spell was not cancelled out by hers, which forced her to dodge. Melty was shocked. her jamming spell didn't work. Fitoria quickly put up a barrier which pushed her back as she slid across the ground. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he closed them. He created a hand seal and shouted release. Like that, Philo felt her body lighten up. Fitoria, seeing Philo's body glow, realized that something was removed from her. Philo smirked as she jumped forward. I won't lose. Not when Gushujin-sama is watching. I'll win. Fitoria prepared herself as Philo charged at her as she stuck her hand out to the side. As she ran, a blue-green sphere of charka and magic began to form in her hand. Before Fitoria knew it, Philo disappeared in a burst of speed as she sent chakra to her feet. Fitoria sensed Philo behind. Fitoria put up a barrier, but Philo was already bringing the attack near Fitoria. Philo shouted, take this. Zwape Tornado. Rasengan. Fitoria watched as her barrier was put up, and immediately began to crack and break under Philo's attack. The barrier broke, and Fitoria's eyes widened at it. Philo's Rasengan dispersed and the force knocked Fitoria backward. Naruto smirked as he called out, come on Philo. Get her. The other girls began to cheer for the second youngest companion in the group. Philo brought her left hand around, which had a green glow to it. A green magic aura wrapped around Philo. The appearance the aura took on was that of Kurama. This surprised everyone including Naruto. Kyuubi's spiraling strike. Philo's hand was covered with 5 talons-shaped fingers took shape the form of Kurama's head. Then the 9 tails flowed out behind Philo in a trail behind her. Philo shot towards the ground with Fitoria seemingly moved from her spot. There was a loud smash. A cloud of dust and debris was kicked up from the ground. Once the dust and debris began to settle down, everyone looked onward to find Philo huffing and puffing from her most recent attack. Philo stood over Fitoria, which said Philoleel Queen, and had a surprised look on her face. Philo held up her fist as she clenched it. There was labored breathing between her words. I'll continue to get stronger and stronger for Gushujin-sama. Strong enough to protect you, Mel-chan, Yoruichi Oni-chan, Raftalia Oni-chan, and Roxanne Oni-chan. Naruto could hear it in Philo's voice. She was tired. Philo hunched forward again as she slowly raised her fist and a swirl of blue chakra formed in the palm of her hand. She then brought it up and went to ram it into Fitoria's chest, strong, to protect everyone. Just then there was a crash. Philo ignored it as Fitoria watched as Naruto simply walked through her barrier, breaking it. Naruto walked up and placed a hand on Philo's hand. You did good, Philo. I'm proud of you. Philo relaxed as she fell into Naruto's arms and Fitoria slowly stood up. Naruto gently picked Philo up into his arms. You knew she would lose, yet you challenged her anyways. You knew you challenged me you would die, so why did you do this? Fitoria looked at Naruto with a blank look on her face and then looked at Philo. Fitoria smiled as she said, Philo, you did good, you've won. Fitoria looked to Naruto. You've raised and taught her well. If I would have taken that attack head on, I'm sure I would have lost a limb or been hit by a vital organ. I will release Meltan now. Naruto looked to the side to see Melty was now free of the spell and ran over. Philo-chan. Naruto gently placed Philo down as Melty pulled her friend into a hug. Before Philo and Naruto knew it, Melty was quietly sobbing. Philo smiled as she looked at Melty, and then looked up to see Naruto standing there with a proud look on his face. Raftalia, Yoruichi, and Roxanne all were excited and happy. Philo won. Gushujin-sama, I won. Naruto nodded his head. Philo, you did great, you were above and beyond my expectations. Keep up the good work. Backquote. 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 Little later. Philo sat on some steps from the ruins as Fitoria healed Philo, and Naruto was still stuck around wary of the queen of the Philoleals. Fitoria once down put her hand down and said, you exceed my expectations on the trial. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Fitoria, and she said, if you wouldn't have passed, you and the shield hero would have died too. Just then a tiara formed from Fitoria's magic appeared in the palm of her hand. It was what most tiaras looked like, but had a big teardrop-shaped red ruby in the middle. What's this for? Philo asked confused. A symbol proving that you overcame my trial. Lower your head. Philo took a step and knelt on the ground on one knee. She placed the tiara on Philo's head, which began to glow. Once that happened, the other Philoleals began to cheer out. Philo, I appoint you as my successor. Successor. Philo tilted her head confused, and the others were just as confused as well. However, Naruto got it quickly. Wait, so you made her the next Philolele queen? Why? It's so adorable. Roxanne placed both hands together as her eyes sparkled. Rifana ran up next to Melty and Philo. Oh my Kami-sama. It's so cute. Rifana began to play with the tiara on Philo's head. Melty was excited for Philo. That's amazing, Philo-chan. I've never witnessed a Philolele coronation before. Just then the tiara disappeared, and a random tuft of Philo's hair stuck up in the air. Yoruichi was shocked as she placed her hand over her mouth. Grmk. F. Philo. That looks really funny on you. Roxanne began to reprehend Yoruichi, who began to laugh at Philo. Is that a symbol of being next in line? Raftalia asked, deciding to change topics. Melty thought it was adorable. It's so cute. It is. Rifana began to play around with the cowlick on the top of Philo's head. Philo, however, not so much. Something weird grew in my head. Get it off. Philo reached up and pulled it out. She then smiled out, but just then it was immediately replaced by another. It grew back. Melty looked at Philo, still amazed as ever. It'll keep growing back, so get used to it. And you'll gain more of them as you grow. Philo pouted at Fitoria. Am I gonna look like you? Naruto then got a notice from the system. Oh, a stat increase and change in her name. Too bad she's capped right now at level, but I'm sure we can increase it soon. Fitoria then turned to Naruto. Shield hero, show me your shield. Fitoria took one of her own cowlicks and pulled it off. She then dropped it into Naruto's shield, which was absorbed. Naruto saw across his screen say, unlocked. Shields were forced unlocked. Philolele series. Naruto saw he had them unlocked, however, he needed certain requirements. Naruto looked at Fitoria with an unamused look. Look, I appreciate it, but mad you threatened us. Why? Come, I still have something I wish to discuss with you in private. Wait, did you do all this just to test us? Melty called out, confused. Fitoria nodded her head. Yes, I did, and I do feel bad for doing so. Is there anything you desire? Melty got embarrassed as she began to act childish and skittish. Well, you see, the thing is. Before everyone knew it, Fitoria and Melty were riding on top of her head in her giant Philolele form. Backquote. 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 Later that night, Naruto and everyone ended up staying another day where they prepared food for the other Philoleles. However, this time Naruto was now by some ruins with Fitoria there with him. They were going to talk about what was needed to. So, what is it? I'm still mad. I don't like what you did without even asking or even taking my comrades' feelings into consideration. Did you clear your name? Fitoria looked at Naruto with curiosity. Naruto sighed as he shook his head. It's complicated. None really still believe in me, but I got people who do. Including the queen, so it works for me. Once the old fart of a king is knocked off his throne, probably then I will be. Besides, I don't need them to, as long as the people I care about believe in me. I don't need them, nor anyone else. If you don't tell them they're wrong, being silent admits you guilty. Even if I did, they won't believe me. Majority of the people are wrapped around the first bitch's finger, so what does it matter? Besides, even the queen knows the truth. I can drop you off, nearby another hero. You're going to involve yourself with us. Looked at her rather confused. I won't involve myself any further. Naruto sighed as he said, that's a bang-up job, isn't it? You'd rather just let us handle it. Well, let me tell ya something, I am not trying if they aren't willing to. Why should I care about someone when they don't even give me the time of day to say even hello? If y'all want something done, sometimes you need to do it yourself. You're the one who wants us to work together, get their idiotic brains to do it. If you manage that, I'll snap my own neck. She shook her head. I know you four can work together, show me you are worthy of my involvement. Naruto then said, well, isn't that a shame? I won't think they are, am I? That's a question for you to ask. I know I can handle myself, but those three, they're easy to kill even if I wanted to. You're wasting your time telling me this. You know and I know I can defend this world. I did once, I can do it again. Besides, I have people I actually trust who can help me. You saw it. Philo is quite strong and the other have an advantage over the others with chakra. Fitoria still didn't understand it. So, are you choosing not to try to reconcile with them? Naruto closed his eyes as he let a sigh. If you can get them to work with me, I'll think about it. If you keep telling me to, I won't it they who have to reconcile with me. If you can manage that, I'll give it some thought. Personally, I don't give a shit what happens to them. They can get eaten by wolves, or killed during the waves. I'll step over their corpse, and I won't even bat an eye. That's how much I care. Maybe what they need is a good dose of death to realize just how stupid and idiotic they're being. But who knows, we're talking about miracles here. Naruto continued to add more jabs at the other heroes. They're stupid, moronic, and easily swayed with no thought in mind. Sometimes they have some reason, but even still their logic on things is stupid. They aren't heroes, they are people playing heroes. Even still you may not care about them, but you care about everyone, don't you? Fitoria quickly interjected, there may be people you don't like, or care and you could care if they kicked the bucket or not. However, you aren't an evil person, far from it, you're one of the most caring people I've ever met in the world next to the hero who raised me. I mean, you took in Philo and raised her, you raised Rap Tan, your Tan, and rescued Rock's Tan yourself, did you not? I did, that's because I knew I had to put some trust in people, just never knew it would go to this length. Naruto sighed as he placed his hand on his cheek as closed his eyes. He saw Philo, Raftalia, Yoruichi, Roxanne, hell even Melty and Queen Morella appear in his head. Damn Queen, now has me all confused. Fitoria peered closer at Naruto. Rap Tan, your Tan, and Rock's Tan, they smell heavily of you as if they're continuously on you. Not only that, but I can sense it, they're at that time of the month and all. Naruto kept the blush away as he opened his eyes to find Fitoria really close to his face. Naruto sighed and said, well, it's kinda hard to ignore when the few people you trust end up wanting to be closer to you than usual. We aren't just simple masters and servants, yet they want to be slaves. I am not stupid to their advances, just confused but also understand what they have seen in me as a person. You continue to fight and provide for them, it truly is a remarkable thing about you. Don't sell yourself so short. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and had to relent. He wasn't mad anymore, he could tell she cared about her previous master. She is trying to fulfill his request to her, you know Fitoria, even after everything you were really nice. Which caught Fitoria off guard as she remembered back to her previous master telling her the same thing. Soon Fitoria laid her head down on Naruto's lap, which surprised him. I'll try my best with the other heroes, I can see they need extra motivation. No matter how Naruto looked at it, if Fitoria wanted them to make up. It wasn't his job to do so, they were the ones who were too blind. If she really wants this, then she should try to get them to work together with her. Otherwise, things will never change, and Naruto just might give them a chance. Well, of course, after they grovel at his feet begging for forgiveness. Backquote. 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 Near the kingdom. The group appeared out in the forest leading towards the main kingdom. Naruto looked around and walked over to space and took a scroll out. He summoned their wagon and Philo walked over happy to see it. Wow, you guys weren't kidding, she really does like pulling it. Rifana walked over to find Philo smiling happily as her wings flapped. Raftalia gave a polite bow to Fitoria, thank you for taking us out this far. Yes, it's a big help, Roxanne adds in giving a polite bow. Naruto sighed as he looked at Fitoria, are you sure we're near one? Fitoria nodded her head as she looked up, yeah, I sense one. Fitoria looked at Naruto and said, Shield Hero, please take care of her. Naruto's face relaxed as he smiled, of course, she's one of my precious people, no way I'd leave her behind. The group soon got into the wagon with Philo pulling it, and the others in the back while Naruto drove. The group continued until they came towards a large gate where soldiers stood at. Motoyasu stood there awaiting Naruto and his group to come. Naruto got out as he said, stay back, that's an order. Naruto got up and out as he walked over and stood about 10 feet away from Motoyasu. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Motoyasu, I'll ask once on the behalf of the Philolial Queen Fitoria, let us pass, we have no reason to fight you. Motoyasu's hair covered his face as he said, is that all? Naruto said nothing until Motoyasu raised his head angrily, is that all you have to say, devil of the shield? Motoyasu spun his spear in his hand and went to stab Naruto. Naruto simply stopped the spear with the tip of his finger. Naruto shakes his head. Even after all this time, I don't know how you got out. It must have been on the king's orders. I'm sure the queen was told to have you two locked away until she could return. Am I wrong? Motoyasu grits his teeth. That has nothing to do with this. I was given orders and a pardon by the king. Since she is in her absence, she... Fool. This place is a patriarchy society, where the queen's words overrule the king's. Are you that stupid? Now let me through, otherwise, I'll blow you away with a simple puff. Motoyasu, dumbly, ignored Naruto and growled at him. You're still using your brainwashing shield to enslave Philo, Raftalia, Roxanne, Yoruichi, Melty. And the queen. How despicable. Motoyasu brought his spear up and thrusted a lightning-empowered spear at Naruto. Naruto simply batted the spear away with little care. Fool. I can't believe you keep following these obvious lies. Motoyasu raised his spear. Maybe, I was brought to this world to stop you. A green glowing circle appeared from the tip of his spear. Meteor thrust. A large blue beam shot toward Naruto, who shook his head. He raised his hand up and flicked his finger forward. The blast of magical energy shot skyrocketing into the sky as it soon dispersed. Naruto was getting tired of this. I'm getting tired of trying. Just give it up, you can't win. Besides, you aren't doing whatever so-called justice you think you're fighting for. What you're doing right now is desperation. Trying to hold on to what truth you want to hold and keep it. Thinking you can justify your actions, that your actions are heroic, just, and right. Let me tell you something. There is no justification for your actions against something you don't even 100% know about. Even someone as dumb as you should be able to figure something like that out. Motoyasu grits his teeth. TCH. Were Ren and Itsuki really that insignificant to you? Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. I finally understand why you're really the devil of the shield. A demon. You tricked us by telling us to step aside for you. As heroes, and then, you are the scum of the earth. Motoyasu brought his spear up by using a sledgehammer with his spear. Naruto stopped his attack with 2 fingers holding the tip at bay. I'll make you pay. Naruto quickly parried the spear away with his shield and asked, what do you think I did? Search your feelings, you already know. Motoyasu thrusted again this time. Naruto realized he was aimed at a vital spot on his body. Oi! You're really going for the kill here. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he began to take him seriously. Motoyasu backed up and pointed his spear at Naruto. I'll make you pay for killing Itsuki and Ren. Naruto's eyes widened at this, as this was brand new news to himself as well. What? Killed them? I haven't even seen them at all. What do you mean? Trying to play dumb. Accursed devil. Motoyasu ran forward as the two collided with their respective weapons against one another. The two broke apart from their struggle as Motoyasu pointed at Naruto. You know exactly why I'm mad. You killed them both. Just then Melty walked up. What is the meaning of this? The heroes of the bow and sword were killed. Motoyasu growled. Monster, you did use it on Princess Melty. Naruto shook his head. Motoyasu, have you ever asked yourself what's the benefit of me killing them? Not only that, but have you actually seen their bodies? Motoyasu flinched as he took a step back. Of course, dumb fool, yet you accuse me when you don't even have evidence to back your claim. Let me guess. Did dear old Melty tell you this? Just then Melty's voice spoke up. It's reliable information from an agent of the church. They said the devil of the shield unleashed a monster sealed in the center of town. And killed Itsuki-sama and Ren-sama while they were distracted. Naruto shook his head and said, that's funny, considering I was the one that killed the monster. Ren and Itsuki weren't even there. Lies. Motoyasu-sama, beware of his lies, mainly his brainwashing shield. Melty smirked as she crossed her arms over her chest. Don't let the words of the devil of the shield sway you. Naruto glared at Melty. He was getting really sick and tired of her shit and charades of lies and acting. Just then Motoyasu shouted, yeah, got it. Melty looked at Melty and her eyes widened. Oni-sama, you didn't. Naruto's eyes widened. Wait, could have seen possibly. Naruto closed his eyes as he reached out with his senses using his sage mode. Melty held her hands up as a ball of light appeared in her hands. Now, it is time to battle. Just then the ball went up and grew bigger as a cage of lightning came up around everyone besides the soldiers. A lighting cage. Melty looked around worriedly. Indeed, a spell that traps the caster and target in an impregnable lighting prison. Melty smirked. She had Naruto now, she would end him for what he's done to her. Motoyasu held up his spear. I won't let you get away with this. Naruto shook his head and said, call me a devil of the shield, one more time. See what happens. Motoyasu charged at Naruto and raised his spear at him. Naruto simply said, it seems I need to teach the dog who the real alpha is. Naruto held his hands out to the side as his Sage mode activated. Motoyasu came charging at Naruto as he thrusted his spear into him. Naruto stood there, as the spear slammed into his chest. However, the spear broke on impact, leaving the very shocked and wide-eyed Motoyasu. Naruto grabbed the shaft of what was left of Motoyasu's spear and pulled him close. Now heal. Naruto raised his free hand and grabbed Motoyasu by his throat. Naruto with one hand picked him up by his throat and then choked and slammed him into the ground, and lay down. Motoyasu's eyes widened in pain as he coughed up blood and spit from his mouth. He lay there on the ground as he placed both hands around Naruto's arm. Youm monster. D devil. Naruto leaned down closer to him. If really want this Motoyasu, I can play the devil, but don't say, I didn't warn you. Naruto created 3 shadow clones that charged Melty and his other 2 party members. The 3 ran towards them. This time Naruto's eyes were no longer in Sage mode. His eyes were blood red with black slits in the middle. The first clone ran at the one with a witch's hat. He simply slammed his fist into her gut, knocking her out. The second clone ran towards the one with a hair color similar to Melty. One solid punch to her sternum knocked her out cold. The third clone appeared in front of Melty. She raised her hands into the air. As source of thy power and the next queen, I order thee. Decipher the laws of creation and drench my targets in a rain of flame. Zwait fire SQ. Bam! Melty's eyes widened in pain as she found Naruto's fist in her stomach. The clone smirked as he said, sorry, I couldn't help but realize how long your incantation was. So, I did as any good master would do. Put the bitch down. Melty fell to her knees as she coughed up spit and saliva as she lost her breath. Soon the 3 clones disappeared, and Naruto got off of Motoyasu. Naruto extended his hands out and said, girls, get them. Motoyasu slowly got up as he said, if you continue to side with him, I won't show any mercy to you. Raphtalia drew her sword and chanted, as source of thy power, I order thee. Decipher the laws of nature and conceal my target. Raphtalia charged forward with her sword raised above her head. Fast hiding. Naruto extended his hand out as a golden chakra head of Kurama came out from his hand. The Kurama head bit down and began to chew on Motoyasu. The girls slowly stood up as Melty tried to catch her breath. Motoyasu-sama. Soon the Kurama head withdrew as Naruto stole Motoyasu's SP and HP with the attack. Motoyasu stood back up and caught his breath. He cried out, I don't need skills to beat you. Rifana watching this was beginning to hate Motoyasu a lot by the second. Just then Yoruichi and Philo appeared next to Motoyasu. Hi quick. Philo called out and Yoruichi on all fours shouted lighting cloak. The 2 together then roared out, dual combo. Predator instinct. The 2 kicked Motoyasu into the air as they both launched toward him. Taking turns, kicking, slashing, and more kicking at Motoyasu sending him into the air. Melty shouted, oh no. Motoyasu-sama. Just then Raphtalia appeared in front of Melty and swung her sword at her, got you this time. Whore. Raphtalia then took a step back as Melty fell to her knees. Melty takes damage from Raphtalia's special sword. A damned demi-human thinks she can strike me not once, but twice. How dare you? Motoyasu slowly stood up using the air of another summoned spear. How could you, force Philo, Raphtalia, Yoruichi, Melty, and Roxanne fight for you? You don't get it, do you? When you have allies, they fight with you. No matter what. Besides, where does fairness come, when you're trying to kill someone for unjust reasons? Naruto stuck his hand out. Melty. Philo. Roxanne. Melty began to chant, as source of thy power, we order thee. Philo said her chant, decipher the laws of nature and bring forth raging wind. Melty. Bring forth a pelting rain. Strike my enemies with lightning thrown from the heaven. Roxanne shouted as lightning struck her from the sky. The three held their hands up as Philo had a green sphere, Melty blue, and Roxanne had lighting dancing around her body. The three together said, and produce a storm that blows our target away. Typhoon Tempest. A raging tornado infused with water and lighting shot from the trio's hands that slammed into Motoyasu and the rest of his party. This sent them up and flying into the sky. Melty, Philo, and Roxanne all high-fived one another. That was great, Philo-chan. Roxanne-chan. We all were in perfect sync. That'll show them to mess with us. Roxanne cheered. Yeah, Philo chirped out excitedly. Motoyasu and his party soon fell to the ground, and he was the only one who slowly sat up. Damn, how can they be so strong? If they haven't even class upgraded. Is this because of the brainwashing shield, too? Naruto shook his head. Just because you're at a certain level, doesn't determine how strong you are. Experience, practice, and learning to combine and use skills together, that's how you get strong. Besides, if I did have such an ability, maybe I'd be able to make a stronger version of you. That way I wouldn't have to hear your annoying and incessant voice. Lies. Why you think I'd believe in such a thing? Believe what you want. We did what we had to, no matter how trite or trivial you think it is. You lost to us because we're simply just out of your league. Face it, you'll never catch up to us, because you'll never understand us. Especially with what we all have gone through, we use our pain, love, hate, anger, and more to hone our skills. We use them to get stronger for one another, so when we fight for one another. That's what makes us strong, stronger than you. Lies. You're just trash, human garbage, Motoyasu screamed back. Naruto smirked as he said, all right then, if we're trash and garbage, what does that make you? Since you lost to us. Motoyasu froze as he had no comeback for that remark. Naruto then realized something was off, the Melromark soldier who was here before. They were all gone, and Naruto sensed an attack from above. Naruto looked over to see Philo having a panicked look on her face. Gushujin-sama. The sky. Naruto looked up into the sky. I see, the soldiers around them were gone. They fled, and the only ones left were them. It seems you've been betrayed as well, Motoyasu. Naruto looked at everyone as he brought his shield up. A golden chakra cloak engulfed him with 6 black orbs floating behind him. This surprised everyone besides Naruto's party. Naruto held his hand up into the air as all 9 of the black orbs covered them and brought them all closed for a dense shield. Melty, not liking this, asked, what is going on? Shut up, Oni-sama, Melty chided her older sister. Just then there was a loud asterisk boom as Naruto's orbs were smashed with a laser beam-like attack from the sky. A few seconds passed after the attack, and Naruto dropped his cloak, and the black orbs went away. Around them, the grass was okay, but the earth seemed to have completely melted to almost like lava. Naruto was just as confused. He looked to Motoyasu and he was looking at Melty. What just happened? Melty had her hand up to her chin and was confused as well. That power, don't tell me. Just then there was clapping as everyone looked up from the entrance of the attack. A man stood there. Oh my, you take the high-class multi-caster ritual magic, judgment, head-on and remain standing. He continued to clap. I'd expect nothing less from the shield devil. Melty's eyes widened as she said, the Pope. The Pope looked down at Naruto and said, do you realize what your sin is? My sins. Hey, please, I got plenty, but I'm still standing. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he glared up at the man. It's how you turn the people against its country. The lies in your existence in this world. Fret not, I shall purify you all in the name of Kami-sama. The Pope held his hands out to the side. Melty calls out, Pope Balmus. Do you realize what you have just done? You nearly killed the spear hero and the next queen. Pope Balmus ignored her and said, the spear hero's party and the next queen were killed by the devil of the shield. Or that's how the scripture goes. In other words, you are walking corpses. What? Motoyasu looked to Melty. What the hell is he talking about? Pope Balmus continued talking, and if walking corpses become real corpses, that just means all is right in the world. It is all as God desires. Nonsense, Raftalia shouted. Blasphemy, Yoruichi called out. Melty was shocked. That's some messed up logic. Reminds me of someone. Melty looks at her sister. Oh, you may rest assured. We have already planned a system of government to take the royal family's place. Pope Balmus continued to talk as if nothing were to go wrong. Your father was quite helpful in the funding of this escapade. What better use of him to tell him that the devil of the shield killed his precious daughters? That's nonsense. No one but this family can rule the kingdom. Melty cried out. Blasphemy. Royalty that abused their power and mistreats the church, apostles of Kami-sama himself. Neither the country nor its people need such blasphemies. If anything, you are a pestilence. And the same goes for you heroes. We worship the ones who save the people and the world from the waves. But, the spear hero released a sealed monster upon the world, the sword hero caused an epidemic, and the bow hero tried to conceal his standing and hide from his duty. Heroes who cause harm across the country and damage the people's beliefs are nothing but fakes. Motoyasu's eyes widen. I did it because I thought it would help the world. Ren and Itsuki were trying to help, too. And you call us fakes? Pope Balmus sighed as he shook his head. Your foolishness speaks volumes. As did theirs, when they started investigating something beyond them. Investigating? Motoyasu said confused. The Pope brought both of his hands in front of himself, that's why Kami-sama's judgment fell upon them. He then extended them outwards. Wait a second. Didn't Naruto kill them? Motoyasu looked at Naruto. Balmus began to laugh at Motoyasu's comment. You've put on quite the amusing farce, but enough. He extended his right hand out, and a replica of Ren's sword was handed to him, for the false spear hero and for the devil of the shield, clinging so desperately to life like a cockroach. Balmus brought the sword to the middle of his body. It began to glow. Let there be the purification of holy judgment. He raised the sword above his head, and, for this country, righteous order. Melty shouted out, Naruto. Be careful, that sword is. Before Melty could finish, Balmus pointed the sword at Naruto and his party, and a beam of golden light came from it. Naruto put his right arm up and blocked the attack with his blessed shield. The barrier he put up lit up, blocking the attack. Impressive. This spell combines believers who follow him to give their magic. This could almost rival my full-powered Rasengan if they had a few hundred more people. Naruto turned his head to Melty in the midst of the attack and smiled at her. Don't worry girls, Rifana. Melty, this is something you should learn. Naruto turned his head back towards the Pope. I will never, ever let trash like this hurt the people I care about. Naruto smacked his hand to the side, which shot the rest of the beam up into the air. Balmus stopped his attack and raised his shield. For a devil, you are pretty tough. That'll be enough trial shots. Now face the real thing. The sword in his hand began to glow as it extended and took the shape of a spear. Melty had to hide her blush as Rifana simply cheered out happily after Naruto said that to her. The other girls already knew what Naruto meant by this. I bet their relationships are a little different. Melty shook her head. There is no mistaking it now. That weapon he is using is a replica of the cardinal weapons. In the past, an attempt was made to duplicate the 4 weapons of the legendary heroes. To make the ultimate weapon, which could change forms and use each weapon's skills. I was taught it was lost centuries ago. What? That's so not fair. Motoyasu turned to Melty. Mine is this true? How should I know? She retorted. Yet you're a princess, Naruto added, and Melty flinched at Naruto's insult. It was so famous, anyone dabbling in melromarks, and the church's history would know of it. Finding it should have been huge news. Melty could only look up at shock at the weapon. Naruto sighed as he rubbed the back of his head. Not to put any religion down, but I fucking hate the church, well, specifically this one. Naruto cracked his neck. Wait, why summon us if you had something like that? Motoyasu asked, confused. Naruto looked at our readers with his eyes wide. He was impressed. Wow, that's single-handedly the most intelligent thing you've said this entire fanfic. Probably for the rest of the entire story. Rifana looked at Naruto confused. Who are you talking to? Not important. Naruto turned back to Raphtalia. Regardless, I'll be damned. Looks like I owe you that date, huh? Raphtalia began blushing as she quickly looked away as Roxanne, Yoruichi, and Philo looked at her in jealousy, and Naruto-sama. Don't say such things. People could get the wrong idea. Naruto smirked as he raised an eyebrow. What wrong idea? There's nothing wrong with wanting to take my girl out on a date. This caused Raphtalia's face to get a shade redder. It would put Melty's hair shade to shame. No fair, Raphtalia Oni-chan. Philo stomped out, annoyed as she crossed her arms over her chest. Yes indeed, it seems we'll have to address this later. Yoruichi decided to turn everyone's attention back to the enemy. Melty's eyes darted to Raftalia with a hint of jealousy in her eyes. Even still, the weapon needs a mass amount of mana to function. Just one swing earlier must have drained dozens of magicians of their mana. Pope Balmus had to give it to her. No wonder you're the first in line for the throne, Melty-sama. You have educated yourself well. Completely unlike your sister, who was too busy conspiring to study. Naruto sighed as he placed his hands on his hips. Damn it, now I'm beginning to like him. Naruto turned to his party. Do we really have to fight him? Naruto-sama, Naruto. The girls screamed at him, which caused Naruto to chuckle as he flinched back. Balmus extended his hand out to the side to his followers. The mana this legendary weapon requires will be provided by all the believers here. My brethren, this is a battle between our Lord and the Devil of the Shield. It's a holy crusade in the name of Kami-sama. Offer your prayers to the legendary weapon imbued with divine power, and we shall purge the world of the fake spear hero and the Devil of the Shield. Naruto shrugged his shoulder as he walked over to his party. Naruto created some shadow clones and brought them in close. Naruto turned to Motoyasu. Well, here you go, Motoyasu. Prove to the world that you're the best. Motoyasu's eyes widened as he looked at Naruto, along with his party. For now, you fight him, as you are the strongest and most righteous person here, right? Naruto turned to his party. Under no circumstances, unless I say so, you are all ordered to not assist the spear hero or his party. It goes for you as well, Rifana, Melty. What? Naruto-sama. Melty went to argue, but she saw the look in Naruto's eyes. It was a lesson that Motoyasu would have to learn. If he wouldn't learn now, he'd learn by almost seeing his party die. Melty trusted Naruto wouldn't let anyone die needlessly. As much as he hates them, I understand. Naruto walked over and placed a hand on Melty's head. Thanks for trusting me, Melty. This caused her to blush as he rubbed her head. Motoyasu turned to Naruto as he said, Hey, he's trying to kill the both of us. Naruto turned to him and said, Yeah, I know, just he won't be able to kill me. Plus, you don't need the shield hero, remember? I'm simply a criminal, a devil of the shield. I don't help just anyone, I only help myself. After all, that's what devils are, right? Monstrous, greedy, inhuman, and most importantly, selfish. Motoyasu ran up and grabbed Naruto with one hand. Come on. He'll slaughter all of us. Us, meaning your party and you. Naruto smacked Motoyasu's hand away. You need to learn, Motoyasu. You and the others created me, a devil of the shield, a monster, so much a monster that I brainwash all my friends, remember? Nothing more than trash of the earth, scum, a waste of space, and more. Naruto turned a single eye to him, which was morphed into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. You reap what you sow. As Naruto finished, as he held up his shield, Motoyasu could only see in their Naruto's two glowing red ends. Yoruichi simply crossed her arms. If y'all left them to die, I wouldn't care at all. Roxanne could understand why, I guess, but even still, people just don't deserve to die. Even if they do you wrong. But I still support what Naruto-ni wants. I trust Naruto-sama is making the right choice. Raftalia sat down and closed her eyes. I hate the spear guy. Philo showed her point of view on the matter. I don't know what's going on either, but I trust you're doing the right thing, Naruto-sama. Rifana threw her 2 cents in. Melty closed her eyes and soon opened them. I trust you, Naruto, after all you've proven time and time again. I'm sure you have your reasons. For Motoyasu, words of what Naruto said to him in the past began to echo. You have fun fighting the waves. I'm not helping you at all. I'll help the people who deserve it. Unlike you ungrateful people, you all can go fight them yourselves. Who said I was in it for the glory and just for myself? I got others to worry about. Honestly, I could give a damn about glory. In the real world, there is no glory in the path you're leading down. Will only be glory, misery, loneliness, sadness, and death. There's one life on your conscience now, Motoyasu. How many more will it take before you get it through your thick skull? How many lives will it require? Yes, I could have easily saved him, but I promised. Don't you all remember that I'd never help you again in the waves? However, I did say I will take this one on by myself, but you cannot help out. Motoyasu's eyes widened as tried to take a step forward but were unable to do so. He tried to speak but no words came out. He tried to simply breathe, but no air came in or out. Motoyasu turned his attention to the Pope, who was still gathering mana from his followers. Motoyasu shook his head. Naruto. Come on, I can't do this alone. I need your help. You lost requesting me to help you a long time ago. You can't ask me for help, only I tell you to get out of my way. Naruto sneered out, annoyed. He wasn't going to budge at all. Melty placed her hand on her hip. Who cares about him? The Pope will pay. He will pay for the sin of turning against the next queen with his life. The two mages next to Melty held their hands out for a spell. As source of thy power, we order thee. As source of thy power and the next queen, I order thee. Decipher the laws of nature and burn my target down. Zwait fire. Motoyasu held his spear out and shouted, let's do this. Burst. Flare lance. The fire that was added to the tip of Motoyasu's spear shot out a spear-pointed firebolt attack. The attack slammed into the Pope, dust was kicked up, and soon dissipated. Did we get him? Once the dust cleared, Motoyasu saw the Pope holding the spear in his hand and was glowing. The attack did nothing. How deplorable. Balmus stated, unamused. Instead of gracefully accepting Kami-sama's mercy, you pointlessly continue to resist. Motoyasu spun his lance, making a circle, and then wrapped his spear in it. Meteor thrust. Motoyasu fired a spear of magic that hit another barrier on Balmus. It's a barrier you won't be able to penetrate. Though it's nothing like the devil of the shield. Some of Balmus's followers fell passing out due to low mana. They're using the massive pool of mana to construct a powerful magical barrier. Melty spoke within the shield prison Naruto made. Now it's my turn to attack. Balmus swung his lance, which created a ring of fire around everyone. What do you say now? All this power, with a simple wave of my hand. This power can even annihilate a devil. The time has come to bestow Kami-sama's mercy on our foes. Naruto looked over to the side as he heard, 100 swords. Meteor shot. Swords and an energy arrow slammed into a barrier that protected Balmus and shattered it. The Pope fell to one knee as a follower walked up to him concerned. Pope, are you okay? Balmus looked up, using the staff to hold him up, looking onwards in shock. Those skills. Naruto turned his head along with Motoyasu to see Ren and Itsuki standing at the top of the crater they were on. Looks like we made it on time. Itsuki said with a smile on his face. The two then came sliding down into the crater as Melty smiled. Ren-sama. Itsuki-sama. You guys came back to life? Motoyasu asked, confused. Ren shook his head. Don't think we die that easily. Ren walked forward and slammed his sword into the ground. 100 swords. Magic swords came up from the ground and fired at the bishop. He created another barrier that deflected the attacks. Balmus said to his assistant, have half of our magicians focus on generating the barrier. You sure? It'll cause a long delay in the mana supply to the weapon. They'll need time to understand their sins and realize they must pray for the mercy of Kami-sama. As you say, Your Excellency. Itsuki raised his bow and fired off multiple arrows of red magic. Which all hit a barrier. That's annoying. Motoyasu looked at the two and asked, wait, how are you guys here? Ren looked to Motoyasu and said, we almost got killed, but that's all. Their attempt failed. Itsuki and I didn't trust the Three Heroes Church, so we began investigating them in secret. One of our party members found a secret file in the cathedral's archive. It mentioned the existence of a replica of the cardinal weapons, so we decided to check out the place where it was hidden. They didn't like that. The Three Heroes Church lured us to a fake shrine and tried to assassinate us. We barely made it out alive thanks to a squad that called themselves Shadows, and said they served the queen. Itsuki finished as he rubbed the back of his head. I figured they kept an eye on everyone. Makes sense. Naruto thought to himself. Itsuki then said, I think it was the Three Heroes Church who stole my reward. You were framed, Naruto-san. Naruto shook his head. Yeah, not only was I framed, but then you two came at me as if I was the one who did it. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. You had no evidence to back your claim, yet you decided to blame me anyways. This caused Itsuki to flinch at Naruto's response. So, you were framed. That's really. Motoyasu looked at Naruto, but Naruto stopped him. You idiot, don't you get it? They're the Three Heroes Church. Don't you realize they only follow the spear, sword, and bow heroes? Of course, they would frame me as the scapegoat. Naruto shook his head. Sometimes the idiocy of Motoyasu has no bounds. Not only that, you were just trying to kill me not that long ago either. Let's do this, Ren-san. Itsuki drew his bow. Got it. Ren brought his sword up as the two charged the bishop. Balmus simply swung his spear which created a wave of fire. Ren jumped over it and stepped on rocks to get over. Itsuki drew his bow and said meteor shot. Layers upon layers of barriers were put up by Balmus. Each barrier was slowly broken and Ren jumped into the air. He had his sword above his head as he shouted, meteor slash. He slashed his sword down as he clashed weapons with Balmus's. This caused lighting to spark between as Balmus was pushed back. Balmus felt weak as he looked down at his staff. That took too much magic. His followers look onward in shock. The Pope's weapon. Will he be all right? Ren spoke up and said, the Queen's punitive force will be here soon. Oka-sama is coming, Melty said with shock as a smirk appeared on Naruto's face which everyone in Naruto's party noticed. Naruto sensed her when he sensed out for Ren and Itsuki. Yes, a shadow tipped us off. Itsuki looked at Melty. Itsuki looked back to the Pope. Surrender at once, and I'm sure the Queen will have mercy on you. Drop your weapon and surrender. Ren demanded from the Pope's followers. The crowd began to chatter, punitive force. What is happening? Just then Balmus stood up, fret not. As I said earlier, this is a battle between Kami-sama and the devil. Of course, it will be difficult. However, our victory is guaranteed. After all, we are the ones blessed by Kami-sama. The Pope holds his right hand up. The Queen's punitive force is nothing to fear. And it matters not how many false heroes gather. They are no match for our legendary weapon and our faith in Kami-sama. Yes, let's keep going. Eventually, I can become Kami-sama. I will be everyone's new Kami-sama they pray to. Pope, we'll follow Kami-sama and you to the end. The crowd began to cheer and cry for their leader. Motoyasu looked confused. What is going on? We're the legendary heroes. Itsuki said, well, let's teach them a lesson. If words won't get through to them, we'll have to fight. Ren prepared his sword. Motoyasu nodded his head, yeah. As much as I hate it, this is an emergency. Motoyasu turned to Naruto, come on, we need your help. Ren stepped forward as he said, shall we, the four heroes? Itsuki stood next to Ren, present a united front. Motoyasu did the same thing, but Naruto, however, had other plans. Naruto said, Melty, you provide magic support along with Roxanne. Got it, understood, the two said in unison. Just then Ren looked at Naruto. Naruto, what are you doing? Naruto handed Raftalia and the others some round balls. You think I'm working with you idiots? Remember, you all lost the privilege of me helping you. Hey, don't be selfish at a time like this. Motoyasu took a step towards Naruto. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Motoyasu which stopped him dead in his tracks. I have no reason to trust any of you, let alone fight alongside you. Especially coming from the guy who just tried to take my head off of you a while ago. I even refused the fight, there was no reason to. Itsuki chimed in, but don't you think it's far too selfish to fight alone in this situation? Is it selfish to want to live? Is it selfish to want to keep the people around you close? It is selfish to fight for what you believe is right. Is it selfish to want to love? Naruto spat out angrily, whenever the time is dire or when you want something of me. You all gang up and call me out for being the odd one out. When I have every right to deny helping you. Why do you think I don't want to work with you? When all you guys have ever done was ridicule me or hate me. I think it's selfish of you to ask me to help you guys after everything you've ever done to me. You all could burn and die in a ditch. I wouldn't even bat an eye walking over your corpses. The only thing I care about are the people I love, and the people who actually gave me a chance and gave a damn about who I was. You all lost that trust in me at the very beginning. I gave you all chances. Yet you broke it repeatedly. If I were to trust you now, who's to say you won't stab me in the back? Hell, wouldn't you all be scared if I actually tried to kill you? Not once did I ever try to kill you. May I have taken things too far and badly beaten you to a pulp. Yes, but I never went out to kill you. I'm not a murderer. However, I am a survivor, and protector of the people I care about. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Remember, trust is a privilege, not a right. No, you'll die for sure, and you'll die framed for a crime you didn't commit. Are you okay with that? Motoyasu came walking up to Naruto to try to persuade him. Raftalia stood up and she glared at him. You, of all people, have no right to say that. Melty, Roxanne, Philo, and Yoruichi all nodded their heads in agreement as Rifana looked onward in confusion. Philo simply said, "Spear guys so annoying." Naruto narrowed his eyes at them. You're the ones who did what you wanted and thought this world of a game. Not only that, but you all had your own selfish goals and desires you wanted to be fulfilled. Melty, who went with the church's schemes and did whatever the hell she wanted, is most at fault. You're just as guilty for being a gullible bumbling idiot. Me manipulating Motoyasu-sama, stop making baseless accusations, Melty shouted out appalled. Naruto looked at her dryly as he said, says the one who wanted me to. Shut up, Melty growled at Naruto as his face turned red. Wait, all I did was trust a member of my party. Motoyasu tried to defend himself. You mean to trust a member of your party without batting an eye to things? Her mistreatment of Roxanne, the way she slithers around like a skank gaining your attention to distract you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He couldn't believe that Motoyasu was this blind, like how Melty tried to forcibly make Motoyasu the lord of a town. Without the town's consent, you stood there and let her do as she pleased. I even saw on your face that it wasn't right, yet you did nothing. It makes you a real coward, Motoyasu. Ren placed a hand on Motoyasu's shoulder. Naruto's right. Itsuki walked over trying to defuse the situation. There. Motoyasu feels bad about it, too. Motoyasu was glaring daggers at Naruto. Give him a break for me. Naruto shook his head. You two are no different. Ren, when you killed that dragon, its corpse caused an epidemic. Its rotten flesh poisoned the air and nearly wiped out an entire village. I don't know what video games are, but whatever you thought would happen. The dragon's body lay there as its corrosive flesh nearly killed children. Naruto turned his head to Itsuki. By the way, Itsuki, that village you did the secret vigilante adventure, forced people to become refugees and live in abject poverty. Itsuki tried to defend himself. If I hadn't taught the Lord a lesson, the people would have suffered forever. We can't solve everything. We're still humans. Instead, you could have used your standing as a hero to pressure the people in charge. Naruto continued to chide Itsuki. You should have spared a moment to think about how best to use your powers. I don't know much about politics or whatnot, but the Lord was abusive. Instead, you should have asked him to treat the town better so that you'd also oversee the town yourself. That way people would have been treated better. Instead of being forced to flee their home. Naruto turned to his party. Act when I give orders. They all nodded their heads as Yoruichi activated her lighting cloak. Both Roxanne and Melty extended their hands out. Decipher the laws of nature and grant my target waters protection. Aqua shield. Melty placed a shield over Naruto, and Roxanne and Melty did the others. Naruto turned back to them. Your thoughtless actions caused the church to think they could do what they want. Now they're threatening the entire kingdom. Not only that, but used the king's powers, in the absence of the queen, to start a war. A war between the church and the royal family. Itsuki tried to argue back. Then what were you doing, then? Sorting out your messes, Raftalia interjected. Philo added with a smile on her face. Gushujin-sama is always mad, saying he had to clean up after you. See, cleaning up, after us. Ren looked away in shame. Melty nodded her head. From what I was told by my Okawa-sama, it is true. Motoyasu turned towards Ren and Itsuki. Why, yeah, it's all your fault. Itsuki shouted back. You're one to talk. I wish you would understand your current position a little. Instead of fighting, you just wrapped yourself around your girl's feelings. Ren shot back at Motoyasu, making him angry. Motoyasu took a step back and shouted, I'll leave the girls out of this. We're talking about all the trouble you caused Naruto right now. Naruto facepalmed. You all are so goddamn immature, you can't even accept the fact you messed up. You are all children. Naruto shook his head. I keep forgetting I'm working with children, you're all barely adults. Motoyasu, that shield you gave out, the entire town was overturned and caused a sickness that spread to children and parents. I only did it to help. Sure, but the legend said that the seed was dangerous. You would think that someone sealed it away for a reason. That it was to protect people. How stupid are you? You're a hero. The people are going to trust you. It goes to show just how much trust people give you because you're a hero. You were too blind to see it. You all let your hero's welcome go to your heads and didn't spare a thought for anybody else. You call me selfish. For every wave that came, you all embarrassed yourselves. You all struggled just to fight together. Not only that, but Motoyasu's indecisiveness and pride got someone killed. As the Pope says, it wouldn't be surprising if the people got sick of heroes like you. Philo added more salt to the wound. I don't entirely know what's going on, but I do know it's the spear guy's fault. Motoyasu was hurt by that, Philo-chan. Just then he got up next to her and said, "Don't say that. I was doing my best." Gushujin-sama was working harder, though. Sometimes your best isn't enough. Philo retorted to him. Dear me, how tiresome this has grown. You're fighting among yourselves in this situation. Our so-called heroes are an utter disgrace. You really should be cleansed at once. Fortunately, you have us time to generate enough mana. Balmus raised the spear as it began to glow. Farewell, fake heroes. And goodbye, devil of the shield. Naruto took a step forward as he walked past Motoyasu, Ren, and Itsuki. Naruto said, in all honesty, I don't even consider myself hero. Not after what I've done. Naruto clenched his hand. I had to kill my best friend to end a war, the only other person who knew what type of pain I went through. Naruto thought back to Sasuke. War changes people. Naruto looked back to the other three heroes. I bet, from the world you guys came from. I bet none of you have ever experienced what war really is. Let me tell you something, war never changes. Naruto summoned a golden chakra cloak around him with 9 black floating orbs around him. Naruto began to fly as he looked down towards his party. As much as I want you guys to help me, I want to show these heroes what it truly means to be a hero. Naruto flew in front of the Pope, who looked at Naruto in shock. A hero isn't someone who demands rewards from people. A hero does what they know is right. The hero gives their very life to serve the people because they know it's right. A hero is selfless and selfish at the same time. They made hard choices, and always have their interest in the best for others. The Pope glared at Naruto. He didn't know what power this was, but it was overwhelming. He raised his spear at Naruto and said, I won't be fooled by the mere devil of the shield. Balmus fired a beam of light straight at Naruto. There was a loud boom when the light died down. Naruto stood there unfazed and unharmed, which shocked the other heroes. What? That was Kami-sama's divine wrath. How do you live? Naruto looked down at Balmus. It's simple, I am far beyond whatever puny Kami-sama you pray for. However, if you have the backing of a Kami-sama, let his divine wrath yet to strike me down. Does that make me one? Balmus's followers began to spit out harsh words as they prayed harder for Balmus to kill Naruto. You fool. You think you can stand above Kami-sama? I am Kami-sama. I stand above all. My dear followers, praise me, revere me. All shall strike down this devil of the shield. Because I am the only one who can truly forgive your sins. I'll kill you and your friends along with your ridiculous queen and her family. Any who follow, like Kami-sama says, sinners will not be allowed court. Kill them all, and let Kami-sama sort them out. Because I will be the new Kami-sama of this world. The spear in Balmus's hand began to glow exponentially as it brought down a giant bright light from before. Naruto sent up one of his orbs, which created a parabola-shaped wall and blocked the attack. Balmus laughed manically as he shouted, that won't hold up forever. You'll die. Die like the devil you are. Unless you bow to me and proclaim your new faith. In your new Kami-sama. The attack then blew up around Naruto, as the three heroes and Naruto's party looked worried. Melty even shouted out, Naruto-sama. Balmus chuckled evilly as he said, that's it, that's all you got. Devil of the shield, ahahaha, my wrath, obliterated you, now I'll obliterate you and your friends. Speaking of now being the new Kami-sama PF this world. Take the men who aren't followers. Kill them all, the women and children, if they do not repent for their sins. We'll lock them up, make sure to convert them by any means necessary. Because you will all bow to your new Kami-s. Balmus stopped blabbing as a clapping noise came from the smoke as Naruto floated there unamused. Naruto looked at Balmus and said, you know, you got some serious balls threatening the people I care about. Even the queen has shown me kindness. I shall not let you lay a single hair on her or her daughter Melty. Nor will I let you lay a finger on my party. Besides that, Aren't there not supposed to be any other kami-samas beside the main man upstairs or whatever? It was some biblical scripture or whatever I read. Didn't make many heads or tails of it, but there was a part that reminds me of this part. It's the sacred duty of the followers of Kami-sama to punish the demons, heretics, and a false god. Naruto's eyebrows went up as he said, "Oh, and you're a daft cunt." What? How? Why? Balmus looked at Naruto in shock and utter defeat. How are you not dead? Naruto glared at him as he held up his blessed series shield. Sinners will be allowed no court. Kill them all, and let Kami-sama sort them out. For the sinner who committed treason against the one true Kami-sama, your punishment will fit the bill paid in your blood. I sentence your soul and body of eternal agony and pain. I'll cast you down to hell as Kami-sama did so to Lucifer. Summon. Gates of the underworld. Everyone watched onwards, even the queen who was already there watched as Naruto chanted his spell. Morelia had all her men stand back. Naruto floated there for a few seconds as suddenly angelic-like wings sprouted from his back. Just as that happened, the wings wrapped around Naruto's body, and the feathers shot out into Naruto's body. Blood sprayed out of Naruto and fell into a pool onto the ground. The blood pooled into the ground as a scale was created from Naruto's blood. Balmus watched as an orb came out from his chest. He watched as it floated down to the scale. Balmus felt as if he was there in first person, but also third person watching himself being taken to the scale. The scale had two trays, one filled with crystal clear water, and the other filled with blood. Balmus's soul floated in the middle for a few seconds until it moved toward the side with blood. The scale then fell to the ground in a pool of blood once again. Balmus watched as the blue orb that came out from his chest shot back into his body. Naruto looked down to see his blood forming a door that had demonic eyes and teeth within the doors. The doors eerily creaked open as pitch blackness shot out pitchfork-shaped weapons. The pitchforks were malleable and looked around until their tips pointed at Balmus. Just then 5 more pitchforks shot out and aimed directly at Balmus. Balmus tried to defend himself with a barrier, but the first pitchfork smashed it. It went straight for him until Balmus blocked it with his spear. However, another came crashing straight through the middle of the spear. This split the spear down the middle as the pitchfork stabbed into Balmus, causing him to cough up blood. Once he was captured, the rest of the pitchforks sought out the rest of his body and skewered him in his body. Before everyone knew it, the pitchforks quickly receded back into the gates of hell. Balmus disappeared into the pitch-black depths, to never be seen again. Naruto looked onwards and saw the queen. Naruto looked back at his party to see them in utter shock. Naruto looked down at himself to find he was out of his 6 paths sage mode. However, he had large gashes and slashes in his own body. Naruto saw on his display say, "New series unlocked, Twilight series." Before Naruto knew it, his entire world lit up as cursed dark negative electricity, and white holy electricity shocked his entire body. Naruto let out a painful scream as he fell to the ground. Naruto saw the queen jump off her horse and grabbed him midair. Once the two landed on the ground, Naruto's eyes were barely open as he saw the concerned look on Queen Morella's face. Naruto smiled up at the queen and said, I've never thought I'd fall into the arms of the beautiful queen." Then his world turned black. Day later. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to find himself on a bed. However, he noticed something was off. He slowly sat up and found himself wrapped in bandages. He looked at the foot of the bed to find Rifana and Philo laying on the bed, while Roxanne, Melty, Yoruichi, and Raftalia sat on chairs with their heads on the bed. They seemed to have been sleeping there since he was put there. Naruto looked at his surroundings to find himself protected by castle walls. However, he was in a makeshift tent of some sort. Naruto continued to look around until he felt a shift in the bed. Naruto looked down at a tuft of purple hair on his bed. Naruto's face slowly heated up as an arm reached up and onto him. Before he knew it, he was pulled back down to be met with the queen's face. Naruto looked onward in shock. Wait, how the hell did I end up here? Wait, I shouldn't be asking that question. The question should be asking why she is here in my... No, never mind, dumb question. I know pervy sage wouldn't be questioning this at all. Naruto sighed. He raised one hand and poked Morelia's nose. Morelia, in her sleep, scrunched up her nose and moved her hand to itch it. Naruto chuckled, seeing the queen most of the time serious and someone who always kept her mature and royal status quo all the time. To see her had reminded him a lot like Raftalia as she sleeps. Naruto moved his face closer to the queen's as he pressed his forehead to hers. As if on the queen opened her eyes to find a pair of sky-blue eyes staring back at her. Morelia was surprised to see him already up from all the wounds he had on his body. The queen smiled. Well, it's certainly good to see you up and awake. Morelia moved in closer as she snuggled her head right into his chest. She also placed a hand on his chest as well. Seeing you injured like that scared the hell out of me and everyone else here. Naruto chuckled a bit as he rubbed the back of his head. He, yeah, I had no idea what that was either. But it's a new series for the Shield. It's called the Twilight series. I don't know what it is, but I think it's a combination of my Cursed and Blessed series Shield. Impressive, if I must say so myself, Shield Hero. Morelia with a sultry smile closed one eye and moved her left pointer finger to Naruto's lower lip, or should I be saying Anata? Naruto blushed again at the queen. She was very pretty, mature, and no offense to the others. They lack any sort of sexual experience, but the queen is experienced and knows how to use it to her advantage. Well, it's still certainly weird to hear that come from you, but not that I don't mind it. Though I must ask, I still don't know why you chose me. Morelia giggled as she leaned in and captured his lips. The two held it for a bit until she pulled away. It's quite simple really, you're the exact type of man I've been looking for. As much as I must admit, ex-King Altcray was a man similar to you. As you are now, a man who faced and overcame great obstacles, but became fearful and frightful for many good understandings. However, he still has no right to put any of the blame on you nor let Melty be able to sway his opinions and thoughts. This is something I am very surprised to hear. Besides, that doesn't matter anymore. He is currently in the capital and we're outside of it. He has loyal soldiers following his orders. Naruto's eyes widen. You saying he was enacting a coup d'etat? Morelia nodded her head. Currently Melty is not with us. She has escaped. At Spear Hero is currently confused and refuses to believe that Melty, or mine he knows her as, has abandoned my rule to help her father so she could be queen. Hence why I appointed Melty, my youngest, as the heir to the throne. Naruto sighed as he scratched the top of his head. Well, now what? We at war against the ex-king? Morelia nodded her head. Yes, we are currently, for now, though we're preparing our troops and I am going to send in my shadows to quickly take out the loyal soldiers. Truly, I'd say the soldiers are to die due to siding with a traitor other than me. However, I decided to be merciful since they are mere soldiers who follow orders. Even if it's clear to me they know who they should be serving. For now, they are to be arrested and imprisoned. I want Melty and Altcray at my feet in shackles. Naruto wasn't sure what it was, but he could tell that Morelia was quite upset even if she kept a brave bravado on her face. Naruto wrapped his arms around her and smiled. He placed up a silencing and privacy barrier around the tent and them. Morelia, I can tell. This hurts you greatly, doesn't it? Well, Melty, I mean, from what I understand Altcray may not mean much to you anymore. However, you still can't deny the fact, he is the one who fathered your two children. He was the man you once loved, and your daughters are one of the most important things in this world. Morelia's face seemed to falter a bit as she frowned and looked down and stared at Naruto's chest. She fought back the tears until Naruto pulled her closer to him. It's okay, let it out. I placed some privacy barriers where no one will hear you. No one will see you. The only one who will see and hear you is me. If you don't mind it, of course. Morelia nodded her head as she held Naruto tightly as she began to cry. As a queen, especially the leader of her people, she has to make tough decisions for the betterment of her people and the kingdom, regardless of how hard the decision is. Now, the people she loves are the ones who are threatening her country. This has been breaking her from the inside out as Melty continued to use and manipulate the king's feelings to hate and tarnish the Shield Hero. The king has blindly co-conspired with Melty unknowing what she was doing. As she also conspired with the Church of the Three Heroes. The fact she had planned to try to kill her sister, tore her apart on the inside. Not only that, but she has to provide punishment for them going against the crown. There is no punishment before death that suits their crimes, nothing more, nothing less. Morelia found herself trapped, and alone. Melty is too young to be leader, and her husband and firstborn are making trouble for the kingdom. As well as their allies to the kingdom, Naruto has proven to have been far stronger than the other three heroes combined. Morelia cried for a solid 10 or so minutes before she began to calm down. Naruto continued to caress her back and held her close, and he told her that he would make sure everything will be alright. That there will be something he could do, and Naruto had some thoughts on things. The more and more he thought of it, there was one thing he could do to them. Queen Morelia sees that the only punishment for the two is death. Backquote. 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 Couple days later, Naruto found himself in the castle on the balcony with the queen in front of him, along with Melty and the rest of his party behind him. Morelia was here to explain to Naruto why all this happened to him. As you know, when we met, I was traveling around trying to put out fires with the International Forum on fighting the upcoming waves, and was thus away from Melromark when it happened. The forum decided that the major nations would each summon one hero and fight the waves together. But by that time, Melromark had already summoned all 4 heroes. Naruto saw the queen clench her hands on the railing. This angered the other nations. As I said, I had to put out the fire the foolish king started. Of course, I tried to keep them on a leash by leaving things to a lord I trusted while I was away. However, Morelia looked down. Melty stepped in and said, he tragically lost his life in the first wave while Her Majesty was away. He was the Lord of Sayat. Naruto remembered the place they went to, that had all the demi-humans. Naruto walked over and tried to lighten up the mood for the two. It seems they were close to the Lord. Naruto placed a hand on Melty's head. By the way, Melty, you're talking weird. This flustered the second princess as she said, what can I do? I'm in Her Majesty's presence. Morelia turned to her daughter and giggled, placing her hand up to her mouth. Then lowered it back to her waist. It pleases me greatly to see a new side of you, Melty. Make sure to do your best to keep Naruto-sama happy once you're of age. Haha, you, Melty said out loud in embarrassment. Naruto turned back to the queen. I must ask, why does the ex-king hate the shield hero so much? Alt-Cray hated the shield hero due to a certain reason. Hence why the Church of the Three Heroes took advantage of that. Then my daughter did the same to ensnare you. Naruto looked off into the sunset. I see, it seems she wasn't going to tell him the reason, but even still it isn't justified. Things would have been different if I was summoned to the appropriate country. Silkbelt worships the shield hero. Naruto nodded his head, but also then shook it. As nice as it sounds, I wouldn't have changed it. Naruto leaned against the balcony with a smile as the queen looked at him curiously, otherwise I wouldn't have met them. Naruto turned around to face his party. Even your daughter, as nice as it would have been, I wouldn't have met the people I have now. Philo, Raftalia, Yoruichi, Rifana, Melty, and now Roxanne. Still feels weird calling you that. Roxanne giggled as she nodded her head. Yes, I bet it is, but I'm a different person than I was then. Morelia closed her eyes and said, if you go, we have no right to stop you. Morelia raised her head and turned to Naruto. However, I promise to clear your name and end the humiliation you have suffered. And to reward you for fighting the waves and getting rid of the Three Heroes Church, we'll honor you with the greatest award Melromark has to offer and 500 gold pieces. Raftalia smiled happily. Naruto-sama. That's great. Hell yeah, we'll be rich. Yoruichi fist pumped. We could do a lot with 500 gold pieces. Roxanne giggled happily. Philo looked to Melty curiously. Will I be able to eat lots of food with that? Melty and Rifana cheered out, of course. Hooray! Philo began to jump around happily. Which reminds me, Morelia turned to the girls and smiled. I understand that 3 of you are in a relationship with Naruto, right? Naruto rubbed the back of his head and smiled sheepishly while the other 3 blushed. Raftalia grew quiet as Yoruichi smirked with her blush. You bet your ass I am. Roxanne nodded her head in agreement. Yeah, we all are. Me too. Philo cheered out, raising her hand. Naruto sighed as he facepalmed, which made Morelia giggle. I see then. Well, I won't keep him from loving you all, but I hope you're all willing to share. Though, you'll all be seen as his concubines if that's all right. What? The 3 screamed out angrily at the queen, which Naruto clammed up. This was a catfight he did not want to get in the middle of. Philo looked to Melty confused. I don't get it, concubines. Melty looked at her mother embarrassed. Haha, you. I don't think this is the time to be talking about such things. Morelia giggled even more. Naruto noticed how much Morelia was acting like a teenage girl in love. Oh, don't worry Melty, once I step down from being queen. You and Naruto will be husband and wife too, along with me there. What, haha Yui, don't you have something else to talk to Naruto-sama about? Melty blushed madly as she began to push the girls back inside as they all continued to protest the queen's comment about them being concubines. Morelia looked at Naruto as her smiling face turned to a serious one. Melromark no longer has any choice but to rely on you to survive. Naruto smiled. Well, I'll admit that continuing to go out in our thing is what I want. However, it won't mean I won't stop by to come see you. Naruto scratched his cheek as he held out a tri-pronged kunai to her. If you ever need me, throw that somewhere and I'll be able to come to you in a flash. Morelia smiled as she nodded her head. I see, well I won't stop you, but do stop by when you can. You don't want your queen to get lonely, do you? Naruto moved up to her and gently placed his hands on her hips. No, now we certainly don't want that, now do we? Naruto leaned in and captured her lips, which Morelia returned the kiss. Once the two broke apart, she smiled and asked, Naruto, are you able to stop by the castle tomorrow? To clear your name before the public. And for King Altcray and Melty too. A breeze blew past the two as Naruto's eyes didn't change when she told him this. Once it died down, the audience could now hear them once again. You and I are the only ones who know about this. It will happen regardless of whether you choose to work with our country or not. This is Melromark's, no, my way of making things right, as queen. Naruto looked at her and asked, are you sure? I could tell how you felt yesterday. It's not what you want. Even now I can tell. Even still, he is the father of your daughters, and she is your firstborn. Morelia looked away and closed her eyes. It has to be done. Naruto saw Morelia's handshake. That's how grave their sins are. How grave they defied the laws of Melromark. These laws do not only uphold to its citizens, but to royalty too. It has already been announced that people are to gather at the castle for an important announcement. It would do me great, if you were to attend tomorrow. Please. Morelia even bowed to Naruto, which surprised him. Backquote. 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 In Naruto's room. Naruto sat on the bed after coming back from talking to Morelia. Yoruichi, Roxanne, and Raftalia was around Naruto, wondering what she asked about. Nothing special. She asked me to come to the castle tomorrow because she wants to clear my name. Yoruichi smirked as she jumped onto the bed and wrapped her arm around Naruto's shoulder. About damn time. She smirked happily. Roxanne and Raftalia both grabbed one of Naruto's hands and brought it to their faces happily. Really? That's great. Roxanne cheered as her tail wagged behind her. Raftalia had a look of relief on her face. Thank goodness. Raftalia had tears forming in her eyes, which Yoruichi, Roxanne, Melty, Philo, and Rifana looked at Naruto. Rifana, Philo, and Melty were playing a game at a table. Everyone will finally know you didn't do anything wrong. Raftalia brought his hand up to her face. I'm so glad. Everyone was very glad to finally get Naruto's name cleared. However, for Raftalia, to have been there to experience everything. To have been there to try to help Naruto push past everything that has happened to him. It was a lot, and to think he will be finally cleared. The man she loves will finally be free of what has happened to him. Backquote. 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 Next day, Melromark Castle. Naruto and his party made their way through a large crowd and eventually into the castle. They walked up a flight of stairs to come face to face with Itsuki, Ren, and Motoyasu. Itsuki smiled and said, "It's good to see you back on your feet." Ren added, "Good to see that overpowered move didn't take too much out of you." Naruto walked up to them. "I'll be fine, I've made a full recovery in a day." Just then Motoyasu looked left and asked, "Anyway, have you seen mine? She's been gone since a few days ago." Ren added, "She must be busy since she is a princess after all." Itsuki smiled up at Motoyasu. "Maybe she's arranging a surprise party for us for defeating the Pope." Motoyasu smiled, raising his pointing finger. "Ah, I see. That's a good point." Just then an old man came walking up to the four heroes, please go inside. The group went inside to find Morelia sitting in her chair, and Melty next to her. While guards surrounded them from the sides. Philo and Rifana waved to Melty, who then proceeded to wave back at them. Morelia started as she said, "Four cardinal heroes, I thank you for coming." Motoyasu, confused, asked, "Where's the king and Melty?" "Yeah, where is he?" Itsuki asked, confused. Just then Morelia looked to the side with her eyes and said, "Bring the two in." Naruto could tell she was putting up a very good facade. The doors were opened by two guards, and Melty and the king stood there in shackles and two guards behind them. Motoyasu's eyes widened as he looked behind him. Mine. Melty looked to Motoyasu with wide eyes. "Motoyasu-sama. Help me." Ren and Itsuki were also surprised. The king is also chained up. "What is going on?" "It is as you see. They are criminals." Morelia spoke up, which made the three heroes turn back to her. "Now, let us begin the trial of the foolish king consort and the first princess." Melty cried out, "Mama, you're being too cruel." Altcray even said, "My queen, what brings you to commit such an outrage? Especially when I was protecting the kingdom with soldiers and the church of the three heroes. This is an outrage. This isn't like you." Altcray tried to take a step forward, but two pikes were placed in front of him in an X fashion. Morelia continued, ignoring the ex-king and first princess's statements. "With the four cardinal heroes, this trial seeks to punish the ones responsible for shaking the country to its core, and I, the queen, am its judge and executor." Altcray grew worried. "Don't tell me, did the devil of the shield brainwash you, too?" Just then a light green spark of magic appeared on Morelia's fingertips as she raised her hand. This entrapped Altcray in a prison of ice from the feet up to his upper chest. The shield hero has no such ability. That should have been obvious from the start. Just then a mage walked over with some items on a tray. Melty cried out, "What is that?" Morelia reached over and grabbed a dagger from the tray. "To ensure a fair trial, you will be given a temporary slave crest." The two soldiers next to Melty forced her to her knees. Melty struggled, but struggled in vain. She did. "Mama." Morelia pricked her finger and let her blood fall into the ink. Motoyasu turned to Morelia. "How could you do that? She's your daughter." Morelia countered and argued, "It's necessary because Melty is a pathological liar." Melty argued back, shouting, "No way. You know I'm an honest, good girl." The mage who brought the queen the tray walked over and drew the slave crest onto Melty's chest, which caused it to sear onto her. Two podiums were brought out for Melty and Altcray to stand in. Morelia called out, "Now, let us officially begin the trial." The two were no longer chained up. "That said, your crimes are clear for all to see. You can't worm your way out of them." Motoyasu interrupted and shouted, "You don't know that yet. What crimes did they commit, anyway?" Morelia decided to amuse him. "First, let's address the recent events. Using a fake holy weapon, the Pope of the Three Heroes Church tried to murder the world's heroes, but he was defeated in the act. We are rounding up the church's remnants as we speak, too." "So, what?" Appallingly, the king and the first princess were colluding with the church. What? Motoyasu looked to the queen, shocked. "Any objections to the charge?" Melty was the first to speak. "Why would I ever collude with the Three Heroes Church?" Before she could finish, a spark of purple lighting came out from the slave crest, shocking Melty. "It was for everyone to see," she lied. Morelia shook her head. "To think the first princess would try to overthrow the state. And no, forget the shield, they even tried to kill the other three heroes. And the royal family, too. I would never get involved in such a terrifying plot." This time the crest didn't activate. Motoyasu smiled as he said, "Mine didn't do anything wrong." Morelia then interjected and asked, "What about the time you tried to assassinate Melty, the heir to the throne, and frame the shield hero for it?" Seriously, I didn't do any of that." Once she finished, the slave crest went off, shocking Melty once again. Melty looked at her big sister in shock. She didn't want to believe it was true, but it was. "Oh, Oni-sama." Altcray looked at Melty in shock. Melty. Is it true?" Melty looked to her father. No. It's not true, Papa. Melty began to scream once again as the crest went off, shocking her entire body. Morelia shook her head. "You conspired with the church and attempted to kill Melty so you could become the heir to the throne yourself. To that end, you framed the shield hero for the crime of abducting her, and even set fire to the forest Melty escaped into. Am I wrong?" One knight looked at another knight, glaring at him, causing him to look onwards in shock as well. Melty is my dear sister. Of course, you're wrong. Once again, the crest flashed and shocked Melty. This caused the knight to take another step back, seeing just how truly wrong he was. Ren was able to confirm it, so, it was true. It seems like she was trying to kill the second princess. True, we did see it with our own eyes. Itsuki added that Motoyasu's eyes continued to stay wide as saucers. Altcray looked at his firstborn daughter in horror. Melty. How could you? And you worked with the church to bring the 4 cardinal heroes while I was away. Morelia added. The king retorted, we needed the heroes to counter those horrifying waves. But the shield committed the gravest sin possible against my daughter. Motoyasu hopped on board. That's right. Naruto assaulted mine. Let me ask Melty then, were you assaulted by the shield hero? Melty was trying to catch her breath from the constant shock of her life. She shot her head up and shouted, That's right. The devil of the shield nearly raped me. The crest this time began to glow a deep dark purple before it unleashed an even stronger shock than before. This caused Melty to fall backward to the ground. Motoyasu looked onward in complete shock, and no way. Not possible. Morelia gestured her hand towards him. Then, Spear Hero, would you like to form a slave pact with Melty yourself? Fine. I'll prove mine's innocence. The slave crest was removed from Melty as she was forced to form another with Motoyasu. Motoyasu smiled and said, now, okay mine. That night, you were assaulted by Naruto and came to me for help, right? Melty nodded her head. That's right. I was so scared, I could only turn to you. Just then lightning erupted from her chest and she was shocked once again. To no one's surprise at this point, Motoyasu could only look on in horror. This farce continued as Melty lied over and over again. Until Morelia finally had heard enough, she pointed her fan towards her first daughter and her ex-husband. Hopefully you understand now. Despite being royalty, they used their dirtiest of tricks, tried to eliminate those who opposed them, instead of doing what was best for the nation, and sought to obtain power from purely selfish reasons. Melty did what she could do to plead her innocence, but she only continued to dig her own grave. No. Melty was once again shocked as she screamed out in pain once again. Altcray squeezed the rim of the podium he stood behind. Perhaps my actions were unbecoming of royalty. But I did it all for the sake of my beloved country and family. That's why I tried to get rid of the shield. The shield is the devil. It will surely bring about the calamity my family once fell prey to once again. I will never let it happen again. Never. Morelia let a sigh out as she frowned. The king threw his last chance away. I hereby lay down my verdict. Naruto then spoke up. Morelia, if I may. This caught everyone's attention when Naruto called the queen by her name. Morelia nodded her head as Naruto looked to the king. I wanted to say this to you too, Melty. You have done this to yourself, where you are now. No one person is above all others. Royalty is never above the law. Naruto looked to the king. Your blind mindset of me being the criminal blinded everything around you. If you saw how strong I was, didn't you think I'd be more of an asset than an enemy? Altcray, you could have brought a calamity to this kingdom and your family because you were too blind. You allowed your own emotions and opinions blind to what was truly right. You allowed yourself to get played and manipulated. You almost got Melty killed. I hope you realize that, if you would have reigned in Melty before. Maybe things would have been different. Naruto closed his eyes and finished as Morelia nodded her head in agreement. Morelia continued from before. I Morelia Q. Melromark find Altcray Melromark 32 and Melty Melromark guilty of high treason and conspiracy and strip them of their status. Morelia raised her right hand with her fan to her neck. She then threw her right hand towards them, and I sentenced them to death. These few words shook the ex-king, Melty, the 3 heroes, Naruto's party, the people in the room, and everyone in the kingdom to the core. Melty, who sat back up, raised her hands to her mouth, and no. Morelia then added in, those 2 thought they did what was best for the country, but instead wasted their time in a power struggle. Even after the waves came, they did nothing to help their subjects. Who knows how many people were hurt or killed because of them? That cannot be forgiven or forgotten. Morelia turned to her second daughter. You must have seen it too. The sorrow and rage of many people. Morelia then called out, their execution will be carried out immediately. Send these sinners to their deaths in front of all our people. Backquote. 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 Guillotine. Everyone soon went towards where the battle arena Naruto first fought Motoyasu. Two guillotines were set up where Altcray and Melty were in front of, shackled by the hands and feet. Naruto watched as he saw the queen have a moment of hesitation. She was strong-willed and willing to do anything for her people. She was for the people, by the people, and would not allow anything less for her subjects. She was a woman who would do anything, even if it meant killing her own family. Naruto could tell she doesn't want to do it, but he knows she is going through with it. The criminals will now be beheaded. Those who turn against the country and its people deserve death. Especially if they're royalty. We will prove it here, right now. Naruto heard from the stands of people, "My daughter died because of you. Give back my home and my family." Naruto watched as they were forced down as their heads were locked into place. Melty began to cry for help as she looked up to Motoyasu. "Motoyasu-sama. Help me, please help me." Melty looked onward as she saw him grimace. He shut his eyes and looked away. Morelia raised her hand, and Naruto saw the dagger she held in her other hand too. It was aimed at her back. Naruto knew what Morelia wanted to do. She was doing what she felt was right for herself. Naruto looked onwards and saw Malt looking up at Naruto. He heard her, "To-sama. Naruto-sama, I beg of you, help me, Naruto-sama. Help me, Naruto-sama." Naruto looked back towards the queen as he saw her hesitating. She had to kill her daughter. Even if she was a lying pathological bitch, it was still her child. One she raised since she was a baby. Her husband was someone she had hoped for. However, his final words to her she did not care to. Her only hesitation was her daughter. She wished not to see her die. Naruto couldn't blame her. No parent wants to see their child die. Especially not by their own hands. Morelia went to throw her hand forward and the soldiers cut the ropes. The guillotine's blades went flying downwards at fast speeds. The razor-sharp edges came flying down. Melty and Altcray closed their eyes waiting for the blades to cut their heads off. However, Morelia found herself unable to move her hand. She looked behind her to find Naruto's clone that had stopped her from using her dagger. The clone smirked. "How is the boss gonna marry you if you die?" Morelia turned back towards the guillotines to find Naruto holding the blades back with his bare hands. Altcray and Melty looked at Naruto in shock. Naruto created a clone that threw ninja wire through the holes of the guillotine to hoist it back up. He then secured it. Naruto walked over and sat down on Altcray's head. While he did so he farted. Naruto sighed as he shook his head. "Well, I'm sure you're all wondering why I'm doing this. Simple, death is too easy for these two. So, I figured there was a better way, and I got it. My dear queen, Morelia, if I remember correctly, you made me your prince consort, am I wrong?" Morelia blushed and held it back well. "Why yes, yes I did." The people in the crowd looked onward in shock. Naruto smirked as he nodded his head. "All right then, here's a just punishment for them. For the rest of their lives, Altcray will first change his name to Jackass. He'll serve under its people doing various jobs without pay. He'll be given food and water when needed and clothes to make him at least tolerable looking in public. All his things will be given to the people who need them and people are compensated. I will personally invite people who were hurt by the king and princess's actions to come live over in Loot Village. He'll work there starting there first to make sure his debt is paid in full. Meaning until he dies, he'll continue working manual labor. For the princess since her actions more affected me, why won't we have her do this? First off, all clothing she has will be given to people who are in need. Including all the money she has towards her name. She will now be known forever until she dies of old age as cunt. She'll work for me, serve under me, and come to my beck and call when I ask her to. Meaning I can do as I wish with her and do as I please. No arguments, no qualms, no nothing. She'll also keep the slave crest, but it'll be a pact towards me. But first, I want her whipped into shape. Morelia dear, I think Melty needs to go through a lot of rehabilitation, lessons, and more before she can go back into society. So, you can hold on to her until I think she's ready to head out there and work her ass off for me." Morelia giggled as she smiled. "I do not mind, this can be arranged. By the way, Melty goes by mine as an adventure." Naruto placed his hand to his mouth as he smirked, and then snapped his fingers. "Okay, how about slut?" "See cunt, slut," Melty said out loud with an embarrassed look on her face. "Jackass." The king said out loud as Naruto's ass continued to sit on his head. Naruto shrugged, if you two can't live with that, I guess I can cut this. Naruto got off of Altcray's head and walked up to the guillotine aiming his kunai at the ninja wire that held the blades up. No, I'm fine with it. He quickly argued. Why yes, I'm okay with it. Melty quickly shouted out, not wanting to anger Naruto any further. Morelia stepped forward with a huge weight lifted off her shoulders, then the man who's done the most to put things right here, the shield hero, has granted his oppressors the greatest mercy. As such, Altcray will work in the town of Loot and serve its people for the rest of his life. He will be known as Jackass, and Princess Melty will be Cunt, with Slut as her adventuring name. She will go through rehabilitation within the castle walls as a servant. She will be taught, treated, and expected to serve as one. Once she is deemed worthy, will serve under Naruto-sama as his slave to do as he wishes. And the Three Heroes Church, the root cause, will be abolished. Melromark will now adopt the Four Heroes Church as its state religion. Backquote. 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 Later that night, Queen's room. Naruto found himself in the Queen's room as he sat there. How the hell did I end up here of all places? Naruto and his party were all at the party that was held, money and awards as well given to them. However, there was a special reward the Queen wanted to give to Naruto. Naruto soon looked up and saw the doors to the bathroom open. Naruto blushed as she saw Morelia standing there with only a towel wrapped around his body. Morelia looked to her left as Raftalia, Roxanne, and Yoruichi exited also wearing towels. Thankfully Philo and Rifana were having a sleepover, at the other end of the castle together. Naruto swallowed, and swallowed hard once they all dropped their towers. On second thought, I need to stop asking questions and just roll with it. Naruto stood up and chuckled, so, is this all happening? Morella giggled as she walked up and placed a hand on Naruto's chest. She began to slowly undress him. It's the least I can do, as for what you did for my firstborn. You spared her, even if the right you had to hate her. I thank you, and I'll show you just how thankful I am. Raftalia ran over and hugged the right side of Naruto. I'll admit this is all embarrassing, but I'm okay with it. You did great today, Naruto-sama. You did what was right, and I'm proud of you. Roxanne blushed as she said, I'll admit, thinking of doing this is kind of hot. Even if I am not related to you anymore, Naruto. It's still kind of a hot thing to think about. Morelia raised an eyebrow and smirked. Kinky thoughts lead to a greater time of pleasure. I like it. Yoruichi smirked as he jumped over Naruto and landed on his shoulders. Come on, girls. It's finally our time. Let's show our man just how much we love him. Harem sisters, attack. Yoruichi backflipped as Morelia finally got the rest of Naruto's clothes off but his underwear. Naruto was flung onto the bed on his back. Before he knew it, Morelia, Raftalia, Yoruichi, and Roxanne all crawled onto the bed in 4 different directions. Naruto blushed as he looked at all of them in their birthday suits. Naruto felt little Naruto begin to wake up as he pitched a 4-inch tent. Oh my, seems someone is prepared. Morella smirked as she reached out her hand out. Backquote. 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 Lemon skip if you want to. Naruto laid on the bed as the 4 got in the position they wanted to be at. Naruto found Raftalia near his crotch with Morelia next to her. Yoruichi laid on Naruto's chest and she began to kiss his chest, while caressing the rest of his chest and abdomen. While Roxanne puckered up and connected her lips to Naruto's. Raftalia and Morelia removed Naruto's underwear as they released his sword. Raftalia blushed as she looked at it. This was her first time doing something like this. Morelia moved her hand to the bottom of Naruto's shaft and began to move her hand up and down. Naruto could feel the gentle touch on his member. He heard Morelia begin guiding Raftalia on what to do. Now what you want to do is begin with foreplay. It'll get you wet so when it's time you can claim him. Go ahead and place your mouth and suck on it as if it was a sucker. Just don't use your teeth. When Naruto heard that, he felt a strengthening in his lower region, which Morelia took note of as she removed her hand from Naruto's member. She watched as Raftalia placed Naruto's penis inside her mouth. She continued to bob her head up and down, which she had to admit, was quite addicting to be sucking on. Morelia giggled as she moved to her rear and placed her mouth over Raftalia's folds. Naruto, who got a break from kissing Roxanne, looked up to see Raftalia moaning as she sucked on his penis, which caused him to let out his groan of pleasure. Yoruichi giggled as she said, "Come on Roxanne, time to switch." Roxanne nodded her head, taking one last kiss from Naruto as she went towards Naruto's chest. Yoruichi lifted her tight ass over Naruto's face. "Well, are you ready?" "Because I hope you are." Naruto blushed as he stared directly at Yoruichi's vagina that was right in front of him. Yoruichi placed her butt down as Naruto stuck his tongue out. Before he knew it, her vagina was right up in his face as he began to suck and lick on her clitoris while also switching between sticking his tongue between her folds. This earned many moans from Yoruichi, who blushed when resist the urge to come almost immediately. The tickle from Naruto's tongue, his breath, and the way he was gentle with her. It was the best pleasure she had ever felt in her entire life. Naruto continued as Yoruichi moaned out. Naruto had both hands on her ass as he fondled them. The group went on like this for a few minutes until Raftalia said, I need it, Naruto, I want to." Yoruichi at this point, a few minutes of this continuous attack on her womanhood eventually came as she shook in pleasure. "Naya. I'm coming Naruto tilde." Juices flowed out of Yoruichi, which was quickly lathered up by Naruto. Yoruichi slowly fell to the side as her breathing was hitched. Naruto slowly sat up as he found Raftalia straddling his legs. "Raftalia." Naruto looked at her as she looked at him with a blush on her face. "You ready?" Raftalia nodded her head as she moved closer to Naruto as his penis rested up against her stomach. Naruto smiled as he leaned forward and kissed her, which Raftalia kissed back. With the two making out, Naruto lifted her, but he soon found Raftalia moving. Naruto opened his eyes as she said, "Let me do it, Naruto-sama." Raftalia kissed Naruto once again as he raised her hips and grabbed his penis. She aligned it with her entrance and slowly entered the tip in. Raftalia moaned as she felt Naruto's 6-inch member begin to spread her. Eventually, she was able to get the rest of Naruto's penis inside of her, causing her to moan. Naruto looked onwards as Raftalia blushed and he could see a small trickle of blood flow out. Naruto placed a hand on her stomach to help ease some of the pain. "You, okay?" Naruto asked worriedly, but Raftalia simply nodded her head. Raftalia reached up and placed her hands on his cheeks. "I'm so happy I've met you, Naruto-sama. I'm glad you are part of my life." Naruto smiled and nodded his head. "It's thanks to you I am the way I am today." Naruto leaned in, kissing her as he slowly began to buck his hips. With each thrust, Raftalia moaned, and eventually, Raftalia began to gyrate her hips in sync with Naruto's movements. The two began to move at a steady pace while Morelia and Roxanne got to watch. Morelia giggled as the two were having sex for their very first time. Morelia was willing to concede and let the important girls in Naruto's life get to have their first go at him. Morelia slid over next to Naruto and Raftalia. Naruto looked over to see Morelia, who leaned in and stole a kiss. Morelia then went to Raftalia as she saw one breast was free, due to Naruto occupying the other one with his hand. Morelia leaned in and latched on, causing Raftalia to moan. Once Naruto let go of Raftalia's breast he was occupying, Roxanne jumped in and took one of Raftalia's nipples in her mouth, causing her to moan again. Naruto went in for the kiss for Raftalia as he began to pick up the pace. Raftalia gasped at the sudden increase in speed, and Naruto felt Raftalia tighten up on him, which made him feel a climax coming on. Raftalia said out, I'm getting closer, Naruto. I'm going to." Naruto picked up the pace a bit faster, and the two went on for about another minute. Until Naruto and both Raftalia reached their climax. Raftalia wrapped her legs around Naruto, pulling him close. "Raftalia, do you want me to?" Naruto could feel her legs around his waist, not wanting him to pull out of her. "Yes, do it. I'm safe today. We all are." Raftalia felt her insides buckle and tighten around Naruto's penis. Naruto felt her tighten up as his climax was hit as he released a load inside of his girlfriend, causing her to moan out. Naruto held her close and Morelia and Roxanne both backed away, allowing them to hit their climax. As funny as it was, it seems Yoruichi was sound asleep after Naruto ate her out just once. Naruto relaxed as Raftalia fell asleep in his arms. Naruto looked down at her as he smiled. He placed a kiss on her forehead. He gently laid her next to Yoruichi. The two slept quietly, unaware of the other two continuing their experiences. Roxanne giggled as she slid over and sat on his lap. "Well, I think it's mine turn, Oni-chan tilde." Naruto's face flushed, and he quickly shook his head. Roxanne D, don't call me that, we used to be brother and sister by blood. Morelia closed an eye and giggled. Oh Naruto, don't worry about it, you know the story. It's simply for play. Besides, it's always kinky to play along, it just makes the experience all the more fun. Plus, Morelia leaned into his ear, she technically was your sister in the old war, to think you're going to be taking her first time in this world. While in a different body, but the same memories from before tilde. Naruto felt himself heat up as Roxanne looked down to see little Naruto sitting up against her stomach. Roxanne leaned in and kissed Naruto and said, "Oh, Oni-chan, you seem to like it, it's kind of hot to think about it. Come on, it doesn't hurt, I'm sure I would have been a fine woman when I grew up. Even in this world, I have a rocking body." Naruto couldn't help but swallow, and swallowed hard as Roxanne said that to him. Naruto shook his head. Roxanne, you're way dirtier than I thought, originally. Naruto leaned forward as he lifted Roxanne's butt up and then aligned her entrance over little Naruto. Ready? Roxanne nodded her head. Give it to me, Oni-chan, give your slutty Imouto your dick. Roxanne moved her hips, which swallowed up Naruto's penis. Roxanne buckled under the size and length of Naruto. He wasn't too big or small, he was just right, and his thickness added extra fill to her stomach. Naruto couldn't believe what was coming out of Roxanne's mouth. She was way dirtier than he thought. She liked talking dirty, it's something new to her. Morelia giggled as she watched the two slap their bodies together. The two found their rhythm easily, and before they knew it, Kasumi was already on the brink of a climax, and Morelia moved down toward Naruto's butt. She wiggled her finger and then tapped his prostate gland from the inside. Naruto felt a sudden jolt as his penis enlarged. Roxanne moaned out, and no way. It got bigger tilde. Roxanne wrapped her arms and legs around Naruto. Ni-chan. Oh Ni-chan. I'm gonna come. Naruto grunted out as he released inside of his, once so-called sister, as the two moaned out. Roxanne moaned out loudly as his tongue hung out. Naruto watched as Roxanne slowly slumped into his arms asleep. Naruto, who had some labored breathing, gently rubbed Roxanne's back. He gently laid her next to Yoruichi. Just then Yoruichi opened her eyes and met Naruto's. She saw him putting Roxanne on the bed to sleep. She smiled. My turn. My turn. She jumped and pushed Naruto onto the bed. She quickly straddled his waist. Yoruichi leaned down as she slightly narrowed her eyes. So, is he ready? Naruto looked down and smirked. Well, my dear sweet Neko, you're being real alluring, so it is a little hard to say no. Naruto leaned in and captured Yoruichi's lips. He then reached out behind her and gently grabbed her tail. Nyaaa tilde. Yoruichi moaned out as Naruto began to gently caress her tail. Naruto knew that all the girls took a shower. Though something was just different about Yoruichi, not that he minded at all, the way her glossy darker skin tone matches her purple's hair and golden eyes. It makes her body looks even more alluring than usual. Yoruichi regained her bearings as she looked at Naruto with a sexy moaning look. Naruto smirked as he leaned forward and popped one of her nipples in his mouth. This only caused Yoruichi to moan harder. Naruto took his other free hand. He lifted Yoruichi. He knew his penis was up and rearing to go once again. Naruto removed his mouth from her boob and kissed her. While they were kissing, he said to her, "You want me to insert it, or do you want to do it?" Yoruichi gently broke their kiss with her face flushed. I want to do it." Naruto released Yoruichi, allowing her to catch her breath. Yoruichi tongue hung out. She looked down and grabbed Naruto's member. She slowly lowered herself down as she got the tip inside of her folds. Naruto felt Yoruichi wrapping around him. She was already pretty tight, dare say tighter than Roxanne and Raftalia. Yoruichi continued to lower herself until she felt Naruto's tip pushing through her cervix. Naruto felt himself hitting a wall as he grunted out due to the tightness. Yoruichi moaned out as she felt full and spread open by Naruto. So big, I feel so full. Yoruichi looked down, placing a hand over her stomach. A small trickle of blood rolled out. Yoruichi, not wanting to wait, began to move up and down, causing herself to moan out in pleasure. Morelia lay on the side as she looked onward at the two. Morelia had to admit, she never would have imagined slaves wanting to be this close to their master. She'd be lying if she admitted she wasn't jealous of the girls. Mainly them being by his side throughout the entire time on their adventure. Soon after 5 minutes, both lovers moved their hips. Yoruichi soon wrapped both her arms and legs around Naruto. I love you Naruto. I love you Nya tilde. Yoruichi began to tighten up around Naruto. I love you too Yoruichi. I do too. Naruto squeezed her tight as he felt released inside of her. Yoruichi shivered in pleasure as she felt the warm ropes of Naruto's seed flow into her. Yoruichi's body convulsed as she slowly let a moan out. Naruto felt himself soften for the third time today. Yoruichi fell asleep on his lap once again as she did before. Naruto let a tired sigh out as he looked over to Morelia. Well, you performed quite nicely for 3 different women. Each one of them with different tastes and different needs. You measured up perfectly. The only question is, how much longer can you go big boy tilde? Morelia sat up and prowled towards Naruto like a cat looking at its prey. Naruto swallowed hard as she made his way over towards him. Well, I definitely can go longer, just needed a moment is all. Morelia, just mere inches from Naruto's face, smirked. Well, now then let me show you the difference between these younglings. Compared to a woman who is experienced, if it makes you feel any better. I've never had the sole pleasure to have fun like this before. It was solely our decision to have children. The way she talked, whatever the reason was due to her being older and experienced. Her authoritative persona and voice when needed. She was a woman of noble status. She was beautiful, a woman who took the gazes of many men far and wide. I see. So I must ask, is this because I saved your ex-husband and daughter? Morelia nodded her head and smiled. Yes, it is a reason, but do not mistake my love for you as something I care for due to your help. I love you for you and love you. I want to do it myself. I am going to give you myself fully and utterly. I am your queen, and you are my king. You can be crowned. Naruto nodded his head. Maybe another time, you able to manage for the time being. Or is it that important that I am crowned? Morelia shook her head. No, not necessary, but people do know you're my prince consort. So, it usually is something good to have. Morelia leaned in, stealing a kiss from Naruto. The two continued to kiss for a moment, but until Naruto had to ask her. He noticed the past few days something had been bothering her more than usual. Once they released for air, Naruto asked her, Morelia, I've been meaning to ask, there is something more to this whole thing with Altcray and Melty, isn't there? I've been able to read it all over your face. Morelia was a little taken aback by this. She was usually very good at keeping up a facade for the public. However, Naruto knew exactly something was bothering her, and it surprised her very much. Morelia sighed as she frowned. You understand, as much as Melty has wronged you, this country's people, and she has also committed a greater crime. I was not able to accuse her of, which I knew she did it. She did it to weaken Altcray, leading him to hate the shield hero for a reason completely. He was acting in love and care for our family, but it was misguided, and he was blind. What could have Melty possibly done this time? Naruto raised an eyebrow, wondering what she did. Morelia looked down with a frown on her face. Melty, she poisoned and killed my only son. He was our 3rd child. It was the plan to have him coexist with demi-humans, and we wanted peace between Melromark and Silkvelt. Naruto's eyes widened upon hearing this. What? She? Wow, I had no idea. Morelia's eyes seemed to dim. I loved him dearly. I love all my children dearly. It's just Melty, she is a devious demon child. Morelia shook her head once again. It's sad to think she killed him, but even then I have no proof. It's just. Naruto was upset to see her this upset. Wow, Melty, not gonna lie, she deserves to die for that. I'm sorry if I'm sounding harsh, but she took your son's life. She almost attempted to kill Melty. Naruto tightened his fist. Does she deserve the mercy I showed her? Morelia. Dear, that is horrible. Not only that. I can make her confirm she killed him. I can make her say the truth. Morelia looked away as she closed her eyes. I'll be honest. I want the truth, but I'm also scared to learn the truth. It's one of those things that you think could never be solved until you learn it can be. Morelia looked at Naruto with a look in her eye. She genuinely felt lost. I lost a child. I didn't want to lose another child, even if it was Melty. Naruto could understand her grief. There is bliss in ignorance, but this ignorance is something that big Morelia. It's not fair, nor even fair to Altcray if you think about it. It was his child as well, your son. I can't imagine what you guys went through. Can't imagine you were told that it was possibly Melty who killed him. Morelia nodded her head, understanding Naruto's words. I know, but I'm scared, if she did. I can't risk my future children and Melty's safety if I learn Melty did kill him. It was clear she attempted to kill Melty. Naruto placed a hand on Morelia's mouth to have her stop talking. Naruto then decided to make a promise to her that he would help her. Morelia, I ask of you where your son is buried. I can revive him. I can bring him back, Morelia. Then I can force Melty to tell us if she poisoned him or not. If her plan to do this to your family was true, it doesn't justify completely what Altcray has done, but it'll make him realize the mistakes he has had. Morelia, if need be, I will be the one who strikes Melty down. That way you nor your family will have to. That way, the blood isn't on your hands, no one but mine. If people protest, we'll have your daughter Melty be put on trial. This time I will be the one who executes her. You, Altcray, Melty, no one else gets a say in this. No longer will I allow your emotional ties to keep her alive on this earth. If we have kids, Morelia, and it's true in what she did, I don't want my kids breathing the same air that she is. Morelia's eyes widened. She could see the conviction in Naruto's voice. He was serious. He was going to kill her if all evidence pointed to her being completely guilty. If they don't decide to kill her, he will do it anyways. If they do, he'll kill her anyways. Naruto was no longer in the mood to have sex with Morelia anymore. The two were going to, but if they are to, he wants to do it when it was right. To be told all this, it isn't the right time anymore. Morelia, let's go take a shower, let's just enjoy one another's company. I wish to tell you tales from my land, tell you stories about myself. I want you to learn who I am, and then for me to learn about you. Come, let us spend some alone time together. Naruto got up off the bed and gently pulled Morelia to her feet. The two walked over to the bathroom where the two decided to freshen up, and then take a nice long soak. Next day's secret courtyard. Arthur, so that's his name. Black hair and purple eyes, got it. Naruto opened his eyes as they returned to their normal blue shine. Alright, let's get this started, shall we? Naruto walked over to the skeletal remains of Arthur. He was the second child of Morelia and Altcray. Naruto summoned forth his Rinnegan as Morelia and Melty watched with Raftalia, Yoruichi, Philo, Roxanne, and Rifana present. Naruto walked over and placed his hand on Arthur's remains and he said, creation of all thing jutsu. Like what was done for Rifana and her body. It started as just bones. Eventually, the nervous system began to form. Then in order the circulatory system. Soon flesh, muscle, skin, and then organs. The brain and heart were the last organs that were yet to be made. Naruto quickly did the hand signs Ram and then a snake hand seal, Rinne Tensai no Jutsu. Ghetto art of Rinne rebirth. Like that, the king of hell appeared before Naruto as it opened its mouth. The tongue held a green orb, which Naruto gently took hold of. Naruto walked over to Arthur's body and released the soul. Morelia and Melty watched with their breathing hitched in anticipation. Morelia looked down to see her son's body restored. It was back to the day he left for Silkveld. The green soul seeped into the body. Morelia looked to see the girls by Naruto as his hair turned white. Naruto's skin turned to a gray pale, and Naruto. Morelia quickly made her way over as Naruto was on one knee. It's okay. Naruto this time was a bit more prepared from the effect of the jutsu. Raftalia was currently holding Naruto on one side, and Yoruichi on another, but you should look. Naruto gestured to Arthur's body which began to wake. Morelia watched as the boy she once lost more than 10 years ago began to move. She quickly made her way over to him and knelt on her knees. The author's eyes began to flutter open revealing the purple color. Arthur, my son. Are you okay? Morelia already had tears forming at the corner of her eyes. Arthur slowly rubbed his eye and sat up. You what happened? It felt like I was asleep for a long time. Arthur turned to see Melty slowly walk over to him and his mother. Melty was rather anxious and happy. She even had a tint of pink on her cheeks with excitement. Oni-sama, it's so wonderful to get to meet you. Arthur recognized the blue hair anywhere. Melty-chan. Arthur looked at her. Agape, you've grown up so much. You were just a baby when I last saw you. Arthur looked to Melty. Wait, how long have I been asleep for? Arthur turned to Morelia looking for an answer. However, Morelia had a rather unhappy look on her face. She shook her head and said, Arthur, there's no easy way to explain it, but Arthur, you died 10 years ago, only after making some friends along the way. A miracle has happened, we were able to revive you from the dead. Naruto, who was already recovering, went back to his natural skin coloration. His hair turned back to blonde, albeit this time there were more red streaks in his hair. Naruto walked over to the 3 royal members. He gave a polite bow. Nice to meet you, Arthur, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Uzumaki Naruto, I am also a prince from another country. I was the one who resurrected you, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I simply ask that you look into my eyes, and we will have all the time to explain all your questions. Backquote. 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 With Melty. Naruto stood before Melty, Morelia, Altcray, and Melty. It was a rather uneasy feeling in the air. Naruto looked to Melty. She was currently sitting in a regular chair similar to her father. Meanwhile Morelia and Melty sat in another chair that was rather decorated nicely. This is a strict family matter, and since I am in a sense the Queen's prince consort, I have a place here, I am here to determine something. Altcray had nothing to say as he stared at the ground. Morelia looked at Melty with a worried look on her face. Melty was rather unsure of how to feel. Oni-san. Melty's eyes hardened as she shook her head. Oni-san, I need to know, did you kill Oni-sama? Altcray looked at Melty like she was crazy. Wait, Melty, how could you? Auto-san. Melty quickly interjected, causing Altcray to clam up. You know exactly why we're asking. It is something we cannot rule out. Melty turned back to her older sister. Oni-san, did you have a play or role in killing Oni-sama? Melty's eyes widened as she quickly shouted, No. Of course not. I would nay. Just then the flash of purple came from Melty's chest as lighting sparked out of her chest. Morelia's, Altcray's, and Melty's eyes widen in horror as they all see Melty's slave curse go off. Naruto's face didn't change as he looked at Melty. Morelia closed her eyes thinking of the worst. Naruto stood up and went over to Melty, as the curse wore off. Naruto asked, Did you have someone else poison your food? Did you do it to cause bad relations with the country of Sylvite, to cause your father's hatred to demi-humans? Melty, after she regained her breath, shot up and placed her hand on her chest, and no. I didn't. Of course not. I'd never do anything to kill my Ototo. I am not that Shaw. Melty was interrupted again as the purple lighting from the curse went off. Melty fell to the floor as drool pooled away from her mouth. Melty shook her head as she said, Oni-sama, please come in. Altcray and Melty's eyes widened as they turned to the door and they saw Arthur come walking into the door. Altcray stood up from his seat as he saw his son he lost 10 years ago. Arthur. Is that you? Naruto could see that the ex-king's hatred was falsely placed. Altcray ran over as he pulled his son into a hug. Chu-sama, I am glad to have been brought back, but even I am rather surprised. Arthur turned to his older sister. Never could I have imagined my Oni-san would want to assassinate me. Why? Melty looked at everyone as she looked away, unsure of what to say. Even then, no matter what she has to say, nothing could change the fact that she was lying. She played that part in killing her younger brother. Altcray looked to Melty. Melty, I can't believe this. How could you? Altcray looked towards his eldest child in shock and dismay once again. It shouldn't be a surprise if Melty tried to kill Melty. Why wouldn't it have been possible that she did so to Arthur? Naruto questioned as he walked towards Melty as she sat on the ground unsure of what to do now. Morelia began to have some tears run down her cheeks. And Naruto, what is your plan? Naruto turned his head slightly to Morelia and said, As we talked about, but first I want to have a word with Melty. There are some things I want to figure out. If you all could leave, please do so. Not much else was said. Altcray, Melty, Morelia, and Arthur all left, leaving the ex-first princess to Naruto's care. Once they all left, Naruto knelt to Melty's height as she looked at him with fear in her eyes. I have to understand, why all this? Why go this far, to only tear your family apart? For what? A seat at the throne? Melty was unsure of what to say, but Naruto frowned. I asked you a question, answer me. Melty's lower lip began to move as she said, well, Naruto growled out, quit stalling and speak. Naruto raised his voice, which Melty flinched at. It was because I was jealous. Melty placed her forehead to the ground, bowing before Naruto. I wanted the throne. When I saw haha you taking Melty under her wing. I. That's not what I am asking for, I could already figure that out. I'm sorry. Then you mean about my ododo. Melty slowly looked up as Naruto waited for her reply as he tapped his foot. I despise demi-humans, when I noticed haha you wanted to make a peaceful alliance with them. I saw it as a chance to get Otu-Santi to go with me in my plans. So though thought having your Ododo getting assassinated, and blaming it on the demi-humans so you could manipulate him, Naruto let a sigh out as he ran through his hand through his hair. Naruto had to admit that he felt kind of bad for Ulcray. Melty used the death of Arthur to blind the king. That way he bent to every whim she asked, and summoning the heroes made it even easier for her to do so. Which forced the queen to go to other nations and apologize for her family's ignorance. Why yes, Melty finished not knowing what else to say. Naruto then said, for now, I'm locking you up. Naruto raised his hands as the queen's shadows appeared. I'll determine your judgment in a week. Enjoy it while you still have remaining life you have. That day, along with that pathetic excuse of a Lord, idle rapier. Just so you know, he also attempted to kill Melty. Look what that got him. Naruto turned away from Melty, throwing his right hand into the air. Take her away. Hi, Naruto-sama, they all shouted as they grabbed her and disappeared. Naruto sighed as he slumped his shoulders. Man, this whole leader thing is hard. How the hell does Oba-chan do this? Backquote. Four Heroes Church. Naruto stood in front of the dragon hourglass as Raftalia, Yoruichi, Philo, Roxanne, and Rifana. Thanks to the extra time the group had, the girls went out with Eclair to level up Rifana. The girls even got to become good friends with her. Meanwhile, Naruto dealt with royalty business once again. Naruto saw a prompt appear in front of him for his status magic. It said, would you like to let the targets choose freely? Without any hesitation Naruto let them all choose. However, what stuck out the most between everyone? Yoruichi grew a little taller and had more visible tone muscles around her body. Philo stayed the small girl she was, but Rifana did not grow like Raftalia did. Remained the same height as before. Backquote. With Morelia and Melty throne room. You said what? Morelia raised an eyebrow in surprise along with Melty staring at her friends. Naruto scratched his head looking at the girls. You guys had it happen to you, so you guys can explain it. It's still a shock even to me. Philo frowned and puffed her cheeks out. It wouldn't let me pick. It said, Philolial Queen, class for me. Naruto chuckled as he flicked Philo's cowlick. It's probably because Fitoria gave it to her. Naruto then saw Morelia's eyes widen as there was a shine. Fitoria, you mean the Philolial Queen? Morelia seemed to have an almost excited look in her eye. Melty smiled as she stepped up. I wish you could have seen her. She just looked so sublime. Melty. Morelia grabbed her daughter's right hand, and Naruto chuckled. Melty was certainly her mother's daughter. Could you tell me more? Of course. Fitoria-san in her bird form was big as a tyrant, and had feathers the color of the sky. Melty smiled thinking back to her experience. The ever-growingly excited Morelia bent down closer to her daughter. What else? On her head, she had special feathers that were kind of like a crown. When she gave me a ride, I felt like I was in a dream. Just then Morelia hugged herself as a blush appeared. Oh my. You unbelievable, I wish I could experience that just once in my life. Roxanne giggled and said, like mother like daughter. You took the words right out of my mouth. Naruto looked at Roxanne and he saw the other girls giggling as well. Morelia continued, it must have been the most wonderful. Morelia then remembered she was here for business. She cleared her throat. Please pardon my actions. Naruto shook his head. I'll introduce you to her one day. Besides that, you wanted to see us. Oh, I am throwing a party for you being my prince consort. The other three of the four heroes will also be in attendance. I see. Naruto nodded his head as he closed his eyes. Well, as your prince consort it seems like I have no choice. Can't leave my queen by herself now, can I? Morelia nodded her head with her blush. With that said, the party is just an excuse. There is some extremely important information we need to talk about. Backquote. 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 Before the party. Naruto looked to his party and said, I feel like I don't need to say it, but we all know not to talk about our class upgrades. Right. Naruto closed his eyes and then opened them as the girls nodded their heads. Yeah. Raftalia chuckled as she looked at her class, I have no idea what this will mean for me. All I got was Moon Goddess. Makes me think of Kagaya, we'll have to see what happens. Even I don't know how this will work. Naruto turned to the other girls, for now let's keep it on the down low. Before Naruto began to walk away he turned to them and frowned, I am sorry you couldn't choose your class upgrades. I did choose for you all to choose freely. Yoruichi shook her head, don't sweat it so much, we know you meant to. Just how the world works sometimes. Naruto nodded his head and went towards where the party was at. Naruto looked at everyone's status. Raftalia got the class, Moon Goddess, Roxanne had, Sulong, Philo, Philolial Queen, Yoruichi, Lighting Cat, and Rifana, Combat Medic. Rifana's was rather new but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have another healer on the team. Backquote. 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 Private room. Naruto sighed as he sat in the room with Morelia, Itsuki, Ren, and Motoyasu. It was rather tense, and Naruto even deadpanned at others. I'd like to start the meeting but you all don't seem pleased to be here. Naruto shakes his head, since the queen went to all this trouble to set up a nice dinner and everything. Proving you all with food too, you could all at least suck it up and listen to her. Naruto looked at them with a rather serious look which they all then looked to Morelia. Due to the three churches' antics, our country has caused you a lot of trouble, and we would very much like to make it up to you. It seems Calmira Archipelago will activate soon. Morelia smiled as she placed her hand underneath her chin. Really? Ren's eyes widen. Itsuki seemed to perk up as well, it's going to generate a bonus field. It's where once a century an XP boost will be activated. Motoyasu looked at Naruto and smirked, do you know what that means, Naruto? Morelia sighed at Motoyasu's failed attempts to jab at Naruto. Yeah, it means no matter how much you level up, you'll never catch up to me, ya ding dong. Naruto looked at Motoyasu with an unimpressed look on his face. I sadly must admit, my daughter playing a part. The infighting between your heroes prevented you from leveling up more. As such, to ensure that you level up efficiently in Calmira, why don't you speak your minds and exchange information? Exchange information? Why bother? Ren closed his eyes. It would be a waste of time. Itsuki added. Not a lot to be said. Motoyasu smirked looking at Naruto. Naruto looked to Morelia as she smiled holding her fan in front of her face. Era, it seems you don't understand so let me be perfectly frank. Morelia closed her fan which made a snapping sound. What I mean is by the time the next wave appears, all the heroes except Uzumaki-sama will lose their lives. What do you mean? Ren looked at Morelia with a serious look on his face. Morelia opened her eyes having a smoldering look, exactly what I said. I saw everything. You three were defeated in the last wave, so I doubt you'll survive the next one. All four heroes need to rally together to survive the waves. You can think of this conference as a way to cultivate that solidarity. Morelia then looked to Naruto. Oh my mistake, sorry the three remaining heroes need to rally together. Morelia opened her fan covering her mouth. Motoyasu grew a tick mark on his head. What makes you think Naruto will be the only survivor? He's just a shielder, Ren added. Nothing more nothing less. Itsuki also threw his 2 cents in. Morelia raised an eyebrow. Oh, I see then, I must be mistaken, clearly you understand where Naruto is and where he comes from. Morelia looked at them. Tell me, have you been through war? Lost the people you loved? Fought and trained till you passed out from the pain and exhaustion since you were 7? Morelia frowned as she snapped her fan back together. So, have you? The three were silent, unsure of what to say. Morelia stood up pointing her fan at the three. Exactly, it's because you still, even now look down on the shield hero, on Naruto. Someone you cast to the side, but yet you forget and refuse to accept just how powerful he is. What I am trying to do here is help you three out because you're in a knee-deep shit. Meaning, when you die, you die. End of story. There are no revives, restarts, respawns, or whatever you call them. Itsuki leaned forward, placing his hands together on the table. Then Naruto-san, let me ask you this. Ren then asked Itsuki's question, where'd you get that cheat shield? Naruto sighed. Oh, the cheat shield you called it. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I don't know what it means, cheat shield. But I'm assuming you mean the curse series, the rage shield is its name. Naruto stood up and summoned the shield, but it was different. It was the Twilight series shield. I lost that shield when it merged with my blessed series. The only thing I understand is the rage shield, fuels itself on rage, hatred, and many more unfavorable emotions. Naruto looked down at his hands. I remember, feeling it. Naruto lifted his right hand, matching it with Motoyasu's neck. I wanted to grab your neck, and squeeze until just before you passed out. Make sure you stay conscious, then do it again, but the only difference is I take my other hand. Hold a kunai with it, and stab you in non-vital areas while healing your wounds. The body may be able to be healed, but not so much of the mind. The shield is twisted, dark, evil. I suggest not going down that. It's not something you can simply control, unless you're ready to face your evil self. Motoyasu led a PFFT, out, please. Evil, I have no evil within me. Naruto narrowed his eyes at him and asked, oh, so have you had no thoughts of killing me? Naruto looked him up and down. You thrusting your spear through my chest, destroying my heart. Perhaps throwing me onto a pike, piercing my body from the bottom up. Maybe even the mouth down. Please, everyone, every single person has some evil in their heart. The only question is if you can accept you do. Face it, and accept it as a part of you. Motoyasu nodded his head, still not paying mind to what Naruto said. A deal is a deal. Here's a basic rule, when picking up a similar weapon to your legendary one. You can copy its stats and summon it yourself. Naruto waved it off, nice to know, but not necessary. Your weapons can also craft items for you, Itsuki added. Or you can use it to teleport to places you have been to. Ren pinched in his knowledge. Not entirely needed, but helpful. I can already do that, but the crafting is new. Though I have something for that. Naruto so far had everything he could need but copy weapons. Then again, he could just create them with his jutsu if he wanted to. Just then Itsuki began to ramble about weapon rarity. Then Ren's weapon efficiency. Motoyasu shouted refinement and stats are the most important. Naruto sighed as he shook his head, putting those all together would make them even better. But the three dunderheads don't get it. Naruto shook his head as he looked to his queen, Morelia. Honestly, if you need an army. I am one. This isn't going to work if they can't even work together without me. Morelia looked to Naruto thankfully, seriously after all he had gone through. He's still willing to help, maybe it was out of love. Morelia wonders why he still wants to help out, the others do it out of self-interest. Naruto of all of them, has the least reason for staying and helping out. Yet he is still here. Backquote. 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 Later that night, Naruto laid in bed as he let a sigh out, for tonight. Naruto was alone with the queen, while the girls slept in a separate room. Philo and Melty slept together for a sleepover after there was a brawl in the dining room. Okay, sorry, but seeing the girls sitting on top of your knight general was satisfying. They should knock him down a peg or two. I agree, it should if only he could realize that everyone has strength. You can provide that for people in your party. Morelia came walking up to the bed and prepared herself to get in. Morelia took off her slippers and moved to lie down while covering herself with the sheets. She laid her head on Naruto's chest as he wrapped an arm around her. She gently moved her hand across his chest and asked, I've been wanting to know, for a while now, why? Why do you still choose to stay here and help? As well as willing to give this old lady a chance at a new marriage. Naruto brought his free hand up and scratched his cheek. He collected his thoughts for a moment but quickly smiled and nodded his head. You reminded me a lot of my Ka-chan. She was a rather brash and straightforward kind of girl. You may not have that brashness as she did, but you have the courage and straightforwardness she had. Naruto looked down at her as Morelia looked back up at him. Among other things, you did your best to make amends and prove to me that your kingdom meant no harm to me. Just had some bad people in power as well, so I figured I'd go along with it. See where it went. Originally you also reminded me a lot of my Ba-chan. Naruto looked back up at the ceiling. You did your best to help me and support me, just like she did. That was a kindness I couldn't ignore or refuse. Especially in a world where those three morons talk about it being a video game. Which I have no experience with, for giving me such leniency once you track me down. You were the few people to hear me out, and listen to me, trust me, and that went a long way. Naruto pulled her closer by wrapping his free hand around her. I'm glad to hear it. Morelia blushed as she snuggled deeper into Naruto's chest. I was hoping sometimes I'd do the right thing. Even if they were the harder ones, I knew charms would not win you over. Someone who values character and morals over looks and feelings. Someone who has rational over emotions. Sometimes the toughest decisions require the strongest of wills. Hey, now you're starting to sound old, Morelia. But I guess I like my woman a bit more mature than others. So, I can't say I don't like it. Naruto smiled at her as Morelia leaned up and placed a kiss on Naruto's lips. Sleep, my prince. You must rest, you have a long 5 days ahead of you. Morelia gave Naruto a small smile. You must train and get stronger than you are now. Help those girls get to where they need to be as well. Yeah, let's. Naruto relaxed while he closed his eyes, and felt Morelia shift in his embrace. He felt a hand move up to his scalp. She began to gently hum a tune as she gently scratched his scalp until Naruto fell asleep. Rest well, my prince. Morelia whispered as she giggled watching her prince sleep like a baby. Backquote. 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 Next day asterisk. Naruto and the others stopped by the blacksmith shop and tested out the shields he had there. Granted, he didn't like what they did, of course, but Naruto paid for the shields he copied. With the group on their way towards the docks, the queen directed them to. Raphtalia asked if they could stop by somewhere. Naruto was directed to stop by Lorolona village, Raphtalia's hometown, before the first wave destroyed it. The group was standing in front of Raphtalia's parents' graves. Even Keel and Van Reichnot were present in Raphtalia's old village. Naruto was next to Raphtalia as she knelt with a prayer hand gesture at her parents. Keel walked over and said, Raphtalia-chan, Rifana-chan. Let's make sure the village goes back to how it used to be. Rifana walked up next to Keel and nodded her head. Yeah, we can help rebuild the place, our home. Rifana liked the idea and smiled at it. Naruto nodded his head and said, that's a great idea, I can collect the necessary funds to do so. Rifana, Keel, and Raphtalia looked to Naruto with their eyes seemingly shining. Raphtalia's tail wagged and she perked up brightly. Really, Naruto-sama? You'll help rebuild? Naruto nodded his head as Keel's tail her tail and ran over to Naruto. Keel gave Naruto a hug with tears of joy in her eyes. Yes. Thank you, Shield Hero-sama. We all owe you a great debt. Van smiled. A lovely idea, I can supply the workers. I know some demi-humans who would be happy to help. Rifana looked at Naruto as she held her hands up closer to her chest. Really, Naruto-sama? Naruto shook his head as he ruffled Rifana's hair. Of course, if it is something that you want. I will do everything within my power to do so. Rifana smiled brightly as she hugged Naruto with Raphtalia and Keel joining in. Rifana was squished between Raphtalia as she was squished next to Keel. However, soon something strange happened. Naruto saw Rifana glow as he took a step back along with Raphtalia and Keel. Rifana blinked once the glowing stopped and looked down. She noticed she was taller than Philo, and just a bit shorter than Raphtalia. Rifana lifted her hands to her face. Hey, I'm older. Rifana looked at Naruto with stars in her eyes. Now I can marry Naruto-sama and make the shield hero my husband. Raphtalia, Yoruichi, Philo, and Roxana all gave Rifana a glare. Hey. No way. He'll marry me first. Raphtalia took a step forward, placing a hand on her chest. No way. Naruto-sama will marry me first. Philo called out as she stuck her hand in the air. Van could only chuckle at this while Naruto just sighed. Yoruichi smirked, placing a hand on her hip. Well ladies, you'll be running for your money. Because I ain't backing down. Besides, we already got to do it once with Naruto-sama Tilda. Roxanne blushed as she crossed her arms over her chest. Yeah. Besides, you two are still too young. Look who's talking. Rifana pointed to Roxanne. How truly old are you guys anyways? Only because of Naruto-sama's growth skill do we grow faster. Naruto rolled his eyes. Rifana, it's about maturity when you guys grow up. You go quickly from the age of 12 to 18 once you grow up, so timeline you still age up. You are properly 18, however, that childlike attitude of yours has yet to go away. Naruto walked up to her and placed a hand on her head, so don't start jumping the gun just yet. Besides, I hardly know you. You just recently joined my party, so give it some time. Philo shot her hand back up. Naruto-sama. I've been here longer than she has. So that must mean I'm older than her, right? Naruto deadpanned, looking at Philo. No offense Philo, you're very important and adorable. However, you are in no way much of an adult. Naruto went to Philo and knelt at her height. Don't be so eager to grow up just yet, otherwise you'll leave Melty behind. She still grows and ages normally like other humans. Since you're a Philolial queen, you might take longer than others. Rifana simply crossed her arms over her chest and puffed her cheeks out. She quickly dropped it and shook her head. She understood. What more could she do? I understand Naruto-sama, but wait for me. I will make you my husband. You got that? Naruto shook his head and looked over to Van. I gotta ask, the more I think of it. I'm sure there are plenty of other demi-humans who have made this place their home. I'll help build and get into contact with those who have homes here. I will see personally they know their home will be rebuilt. Besides, everyone deserves to have their one true home. I should expect nothing less than the best from you, Shield Hero-sama. Van gave a polite bow to Naruto as he walked past him to walk through the ruins of Raftalia's home. Naruto continued to walk until he came up to a ruined cathedral until a voice spoke up, Oi! A man with red hair came walking up to Naruto. He raised his right hand and asked, Do you live here by chance? Naruto shook his head. No, I didn't live here, but my friends used to. At least before the wave this village. The man placed a hand on his hip. I see, but man, this is an awful sight. Nothing but rubble as far as the eye can see. Naruto looked at him funny. It was as if he was talking to Naruto if he was younger. Just so you know, I am 18. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Oh, I see, but it's just how I talk to people who are younger than me. The man shrugged his shoulders until a woman with silver hair walked up to him. Lark, we should go. Lark agreed. All right, let's go then. See ya. Naruto watched as the two people walked away, continuing back to their journey. Naruto walked back toward everyone and looked at Raftalia. I will remake everyone's houses now. It'll take me a moment. Though I should be able to do well with what I got here. Naruto made a shadow clone that appeared next to him. Naruto went through several hand seals and slammed his hand on the ground. Mokuden, Renshuka no Jutsu. Naruto's clone slammed his hands on the ground to mold the earth to move around the stones in the area. Like houses were already big and pre-built and erected from the ground. They were very similar to the houses back in Konoha. So, they would be much more resistant to most attacks and even fires as well. Naruto made sure to keep the place relatively the same as it was before. Though he left the cathedral the same, he knew people would want to build that in their image. Naruto then also embedded a heroism seal in the middle of the town into the ground. All the ruined houses were replaced with houses that were ready for people to move into. Just furniture and more needed to be brought to make it people's place. Naruto also threw in docks and stairs that led down to it so people could start up a shipping company. Naruto then had his clone use the earth to use the old, ruined stones of the houses to create a path. One that led to the middle of the town, cemetery, and out of the village for people who were walking in. Naruto created signs creating extra roads for people to walk down and paths to their houses. Once Naruto was done, he looked to the front of the village and weaved through some more hand signs. While watching, Philo, Rifana, Heel, and Van had their eyes widen at the sheer quantity of Naruto's creations. Raftalia was beaming with pride and joy along with Yoruichi and Roxanne. Naruto then said, Mokuden Haijutsu Jukai Koden. Wood release secret technique. Nativity of a world of trees. Like that, large trees began to grow, causing trees to surround the village with live greenery and more grass. Naruto added apple, pear, and peach trees for the people to harvest and eat. Naruto then stomped on the ground which from outside the village. A mountain erected from the seas created a large mountaintop that would eventually collect snow. The mountain Naruto created was similar to the size of the mountaintops Naruto knew in his old world. Then a trail was cut into the mountain that came rushing down, which led around the outskirts of the village to a river, and then to a large lake for the water to pool at. Naruto went through some more hand signs and shouted Sweden, Dai Bakusui Shoha. Water style. Great exploding water colliding wave. A large wave of water spewed from Naruto's mouth which shot up towards the top of the mountain, landing in the semi-lake made up at the top. Soon the water came running down towards making the village's river. Naruto had an earth clone go up there to set up seals to create an infinite source of water. Of course, it would be adjusted in case if there was actual rain that fell onto the village. This way a steady stream of water was always running for them. They're done. I think we did all we could. Naruto clapped his hands together. Naruto turns to the girls shouting at him, are you okay? Raphtalia ran up to Naruto, you used so many jutsus. You aren't going to turn gray or wrinkly that one time, Naruto-sama. Philo looked at Naruto worried as she ran up to him, placing her face into his stomach. You did use a lot of charka, Naruto-sama. We're worried. Yoruichi placed a hand on her hip looking at her lover with concern. We just don't want you passing out on us, Naruto-sama. Roxanne looked worried as well. Rifana was still amazed along with Keel and Van. That was amazing. Even some of the villagers who did return looked at Naruto with admiration. Van was rather taken aback by this. Seriously, it was good that Naruto wasn't their enemy. Otherwise, everyone would be completely screwed. Just then Philo asked, Naruto-sama, think you could create animals? You can revive others. Why do you ask? Naruto looked at her confused along with everyone. So, I can eat them as a snack, of course. Philo smiled as some drool began to pool at the corner of her mouth. Backquote. 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 Naruto had everyone say their goodbyes and began to make their way on the road once again. While in the cart, Raphtalia asked, hey, Naruto. Naruto looked to Raphtalia along with everyone else, though Philo kept pulling the cart while they moved. Yeah, what's up? I know it's a stupid question to ask, but you won't ever leave us, right? Raphtalia looked at Naruto wanting reassurance he wouldn't. The Queen's general got her rather pissed at the words he said. Then again, Raphtalia knew the answer but just wanted to make sure herself. Naruto smiled gently, of course not, silly. Naruto shook his head as his hair flailed in the wind. What kind of person do you think I am? I'm Uzumaki fucking Naruto. I don't leave the people I care about behind. That's a promise. I'll stay here with you guys, forever. Naruto gave them all one big grin. The girls all smiled happy with his response. Mental note, remind me to give the Queen's general a piece of my mind later. Oh yeah, do that, give that asshole a good old 1-2 for me. Just then Naruto was cut from his thoughts as he looked up and down and then around. Down here, you dumbass. Naruto looked down at his lap to see a red nine-tailed fox sitting on the seat of the wagon. Been a long time, kid, finally just. Kurama was cut from his thoughts as Naruto pulled him into a hug. Naruto began to cry and sputter out crazily, hugging the chibi-sized Kurama. Hey, Naruto, you're getting snot all over my fur. See, come on, you're crying rivers on me. Naruto. Naarrrruuttttoo.